A bright sunny day. A mountainous area where there are almost no signs of life. Only occasionally green blades of grass are seen somewhere. A rabbit is sitting among such green blades of grass. He chews his treat, listening. The earth, the sky are reflected in his eyes. Suddenly his attention is attracted by something that is there in the sky. He raises his head up. A huge bird hovers among the clouds, with two people on its back. The bird descends lower, preparing to land. White bird feathers fly around. One person looks down at the ground. Finally, the bird finds itself on a solid surface. It folds its wings, and two people jump off its back to the ground. This is the most remote place in the western region of the 100,000 mountains. The man asks Kinren if he even knows where they are. The younger boy immediately replies that, of course, he knows about it, and then proudly proclaims that he wants to stay here and build his own sect. The old man just silently looks at the smug and determined Kinren. He tells Daddy that whoever becomes a core disciple of the Kingshuan sect has two choices. The first is to stay in the Kingshuan sect and become one of its elders in the future. The second is to get a golden seal, with which you can establish a sect alone. The old man added that he was very happy about the choice of the boy, and then wanted to add something else, but was interrupted by his student. The latter, accepting the wrapped object from the teacher's hands, said that he had already thought everything over carefully. He took into account several important points. Firstly, never to be an enemy of the Kingshuan sect. Secondly, the founder of the sect must necessarily preach and take into account the laws, as well as guide people to goodness and righteousness. Thirdly, if the sect collapses, it is necessary to immediately return the golden seal. The old man noticed that his teaching chose the region of the 100,000 mountains, the most remote. In the entire western region, there is no one around, only wild animals and poisonous swamps everywhere, and there are almost no plants and trees here. Is this place exactly a good choice for founding a sect? Is Kinren sure about this? He hastened to reassure his teacher, asking him not to worry and convincing him that he knows what he is doing. The teacher was a little more embarrassed, pointing at the student with his finger, but eventually gave up, deciding not to dissuade the young man from his idea anymore. He explained that Kinren just needed to put her energy and a drop of blood into the golden seal, then let her create the sect herself. He also told him to remember one important point. Well, being is the most important thing in the sect. At this point, the teacher finished with the instructions, finally deciding to leave the student to continue to cope on his own. The bird on which both had flown rose up again. Now taking with it only one, the teacher left the student who was standing and looking up. Kinren exhaled with relief, waiting for the moment when his teacher would fly away. He believed that the old man did not need to explain to him what kind of place it was, because he already knows everything perfectly well. However, the choice fell on this region because Kinren needed a place where he could practice on his own and improve his strength without the influence of the outside world. Now he glanced at the object that had been handed to him by the teacher. Is this the legendary heavenly boundary tablet that is used to create the golden seals of the spiritual treasure? He remembered that everyone who wants to found a sect must have this tablet, otherwise the sect will be in great trouble. According to the history book of the Kingshuan sect, 500 years ago, there was an unusually strong man who wanted to go against the heavens, and he forcibly opened the sect. Who would have thought that just 6 months after the opening of the sect, she experienced a catastrophe? The entire sect was wiped off the face of the earth, and her well-being was destroyed. It is also rumored that it was here, in the region of the 100,000 mountains, that man opened the sect by force. For this reason it is so dangerous here. Kinren paused, and then brought his finger to his teeth, biting until it bled. He dropped the droplets that appeared on the golden seal, lowering it to the ground. Some kind of energy began to form around. Kinren folded his hands in a gesture of greeting and introduced himself. He is the younger Kinren. He is here to found a sect, and it will be called the Huaxi sect. The golden seal rose higher and higher. It glowed and glittered. The task assigned to it was clear: Huaxi, to found a sect. In the ice palace, which was located in the middle of a mountainous area, a girl was sitting at a table by the window. A bright glow in the sky caught her attention. As he suddenly remembered the past, she was sitting by a tree. The young man standing next to her addressed her, Yuer, and promised that one day he would become a core disciple of the Kingshuan sect, become one of the masters, and then create his own sect. He said that he was thinking about the sect he would create in the future and wanted to call it the Huaxi sect. Now the girl who was thinking about it realized that Kinren had managed to do what he wanted, create his own sect. Meanwhile, the golden seal was working hard to create a sect. Kinren watched, wondering, is this the voice of heaven? Bright glowing stars were flying around him. The golden seal, on the base of which was written, Golden Seal, Spiritual Treasure, hovered in the air. This year, Kinren wanted to touch the sky and reach out to the stars themselves. He stared at the seal in surprise. Does heaven know everything about him? Kinren is not from this world. He came to this world from Earth. When he first woke up in this world, he was already a disciple of the Kingshuan sect. Having learned then about the dangers and wonders of this world, he made a well-thought-out plan and eventually spent all his strength and time on training. Now, finally, he was able to become a core disciple of the Kingshuan sect and had the opportunity to develop independently. He never told anyone about it, but the golden seal was able to find out from somewhere. The voice that reached Qin Ren was saying that his blood did not belong to this world. The boy thought that this voice was in his head. He did not expect that the golden seal would find out that he was from another world, so he did not know what to do now and assumed that a catastrophe would happen now. But the voice continued to speak. Since the Huaxi sect master is from another world, the Huaxi sect can recruit disciples from the sect master's world. These words caused Qin Ren to be surprised. It also became known from the seal that all disciples from another world can create their own bodies, and after death, the souls of such disciples will be enclosed in a golden seal, and they can be resurrected after recreating the body. The voice asked if Qin Ren needed the seal's help with this. Qin Ren didn't understand what the seal meant. Even after she found out that he was from another world, nothing happened. It turns out that he will be able to call people into this world from his own world, as well as resurrect them. Qin Ren thought, once you can create your own body, die and be resurrected. In this case, he should make something like an online game out of the sect. And since the world he came from is Earth, the called students will definitely know about online games. He smiled at his own idea. It seemed beautiful. Qin Ren turned to the golden seal, asking for help to summon the disciples. He stated that he wants 100 beautiful students with big breasts. There was silence. Qin Ren looked at the seal, and then indignantly asked why she frowned. The voice answered him, the golden seal can only recruit players, but not select them. Qin Ren looked suspiciously at the interlocutor, and then asked what he had just said. He stammered out that he had heard everything. Qin Ren asked again, the seal just said players, right? He screamed that he immediately thought that the seal was some kind of strange, like this voice. And now she also knows about the players. The voice, having hardened, explained that the heavenly Tao is omniscient. Qin Ren still thought that there was something wrong with this seal. He assumed that it was also a person from another world, like himself, just this person is stronger. After that, he decided that it didn't matter, he just needed to follow his plan. The guy turned to the seal again, calling it the heavenly way. The seal immediately corrected him, saying that she was a golden seal, not a heavenly path. Qin Ren was looking at the seal, which was too annoying. The young man turned to the press again, asking for help to create an online game site on Earth, and then the press should go to Earth and recruit 100 nerds of online games. He repeated, asking if everything was clear, printing should pretend to be an online game in order to recruit students. The seal confirmed all that was said. A new place of conscription was opened, and the method of conscription was also established. Qin Ren was pleased, saying that, in his opinion, everything should work out for the seal. He himself was thinking that he would become like an NPC in the game, create an invincible army that could be resurrected endlessly, and if he also enters into an unequal agreement with them, he will be able to manage their lives at his discretion. With this agreement, it will be possible to forget about possible betrayal. He chuckled, believing that with gamers, his sect would definitely become the strongest on this continent. His face was beaming, his lips were smiling, he was determined. Earth, 2031, a residential space where there are several apartments. In one of them there is a table on which there are a lot of things. Some guy is looking at some object, admiring it and saying that it is amazing. These words were directed at the VR helmet. The guy had already forgotten his existence. Now this man decided to play a little. He even had a couple of ideas. He put the helmet on his head, pressed the blue button that was in the forehead area. Now he will kill everyone in the form of a Gundam. A yellow piece of paper landed smoothly on the table. The guy took off his helmet and looked questioningly at this piece of paper. It was an entrance exam ticket. It was written in small print at the bottom, 100% virtual reality with incredible graphics. 100 people who pass the exam will get there for free. The guy who received this exam ticket. A table in the middle of his room with this sheet in his hands, repeating what was written, a free VR game for 100 seats to pass the test. He immediately sat down at the computer, saying that he was interested in this. Now he wanted to know the details. In the search bar of the browser, he typed the following, Fantasy VR, a game about cultivators. When he saw the search results, he was speechless for a second. What he saw disappointed him. He was indignant, saying that even his grandmother would have done better. He decided that this game was probably some kind of game. Otherwise it wouldn't have been given away for free. He flopped into bed, taking off his slippers on the move, deciding to go to bed and not waste time in vain. Later, he raised his head, turning back to the computer. Now he decided that maybe it wasn't a hoax at all. Anyway, he doesn't spend a penny, why not try? Now he was already lying on the bed with a helmet on, worrying about how uncomfortable this helmet was. He went into the game and was immediately surprised. It seemed to him that it was very good, and the textures were very realistic. The voice in the game welcomed the first beta player, informing that the game will use the appearance of a player from the real world. Players will also be able to search for clothes based on their appearance and parameters, and the default pain level is set to 5%. After completing the character setup, you will be able to enter the game, but before that you had to confirm your nickname. On the screen in front of him, you could select the parameters of the character. The guy looked thoughtfully at the screen that appeared next to him, and said that he had such an appearance which would not be particularly affected by weight loss. He shifted the slider in the direction of appearance, explaining that in any case he will be able to lose weight, but he will not be able to make a beautiful appearance by training alone. A voice in the game said that the confirmation and installation of the appearance of the character is taking place. The guy looked at himself and the result impressed him. It seemed to him that now he really looks much more beautiful. The nickname he chose was not occupied by someone, so the system asked if he really wanted to use Demon Flutist as a nickname. Smiling, the player enthusiastically confirmed the nickname. The actions are transferred to the hall of the Huaxi sect. Qin Ren was standing on the steps. Something began to form behind him. He turned around, addressing the player who had just arrived. The demon flutist who appeared on the territory of the sect stood with his mouth wide open. He looked around and concluded that this game is simply amazing and looks no worse than reality, and the pain level of 5% feels like a mosquito bite. Over time, more and more people began to appear on the territory of the Huaxi sect. Everyone was surprised at how realistic everything seemed here. Someone said that they seemed to be an isekai. One man noticed that this hall is very old and looks more like ruins, and later people noticed Qin Ren, mistaking him for an NPC. He smiled, because that's what he expected. The young man turned to the players, greeting them as disciples of the Huaxi sect. He also introduced himself, Qin Ren, master of the Huaxi sect. The crowd praised his appearance, saying that he looked like some kind of actor. Qin Ren asked everyone to look at the agreement. An agreement appeared before the players. They had questions about it. They used to agree with this in front of their monitors. But now what? Shouldn't they agree with the rules when they first enter the game? One man said that this agreement is more like a slave contract. The message from the system said that in order to start the game, you need to confirm the user's agreement on the rules of the game. Qin Ren watched and thought that it had finally started. He thought that this was just the beginning, and he was sure that what awaits these players in the future is worth this agreement. However, he thought that the players might not agree if they started reading the agreement in full. The crowd started talking again. Someone advised not to read into the agreement, because everyone will eventually agree anyway, because they will not be able to play without consent. Others agreed with this. Besides, they did not want to read this agreement. It would take too much time. Everyone immediately agreed. Someone remarked that this was to be expected from Brother Tong. Qin Ren looked at Brother Tong, saying that this guy clearly knows how to convince people. The young man thought that now he was one step closer to his goal. At first he chose this place because he didn't want to reveal that he was also from Earth. However, he did not expect that he would be able to recruit 100 students who also cannot die. Heaven itself is on his side. Now he was going to force these students to do something. It remained to decide what it would be. Remembering the hall, Qin Ren decided that the first thing to do was to restore it, because free labor should not be wasted. The head of the sect turned to the disciples, preparing to announce his decision. The players listened impatiently to what he would say. What he had decided, someone hoped that now, finally, a fight with monsters was waiting for them. One person in the crowd said that usually the first task in such games is killing a chicken, and the second hoped that in this game they would not just kill a chicken. Qin Ren looked at his students speechlessly as they talked incessantly about killing monsters. Everyone expressed their ideas and so on. The head's face frowned. He thought that even if they were all his students, there were still too many of them. Despite the fact that they accepted the agreement that they could not betray him, he allowed them to leave at any time. In addition, they can also opt out of the game. They shouldn't waste their time if they don't want to play. Qin Ren coughed, urging his students to be silent because it was too noisy. He repeated what he had said before about the decision he had made. He told the students to come down from the mountain and explore this world better. The players were inspired. They liked the opportunity to start new adventures. They were ready to go exploring the territory. The players turned to Brother Ren, called him to go on a trip rather. The same, in turn, considered them a bunch of idiots. However, the main thing for him was one thing. He needed to convince them to study in his sect because they could leave at any moment since they were not connected with this world in any way. Along the way, the players began to have questions. How long they have been walking, how long this task will take them. Someone replied that they had already passed a lot, but this game is very cool. Someone was already barely walking. And there were a lot of them because they had been walking like this for an hour and a half. Qin Ren silently commented on their conversations. What did they think? This is not a walk. They were almost there now. Suddenly, Qin Ren stopped. He addressed the Taoist cultivators, saying that they should not be afraid of difficulties. They should train at every opportunity to strive for the Tao. He pointed his finger somewhere to the side, saying that he was the first test. A huge sleeping animal lay in front of the players. The crowd started talking again. The students said that the model of the monster is just perfect. He even breathes super realistic. This monster is called Shuang Huao. It is found at the foot of Mount Zongmen. Besides him, there are also many other monsters. As long as all these monsters are here, it will be difficult for the sect to extract nearby natural resources. So, killing these monsters is the first test for the players. Qin Ren announced that the students needed to kill 100 Shuang Huao in 3 days. The faces of the students were tense. They seemed excited. The head of the sect added that if the disciples fail, then they will listen carefully to his advances and cultivate conscientiously, but so as not to overdo it. Now he was thinking that, although most of the sources of resources here are occupied by monsters, there are also those that are absolutely free. However, as long as the players wanted to fight, Kinren wanted to use them as manpower. Brilliant! Someone began to lift the tree, leaving only a stump from it. It was the demon flutist who had thrown the object he had grabbed onto his shoulder and was now rushing towards where Kinren was standing. The guy ran past the teacher, and he just looked questioningly while the demon flutist, jumping into the air, wished death to his enemy. A demon flutist with a tree on his shoulder furiously ran at the enemy, wishing him death. When he got close, he swung his weapon, hit the monster hard. The other players looked on with excitement. The tree was cracked by the impact. Now that the whole picture was visible, one could see how negligibly small the demon flutist was compared to the monsters he attacked. There were whispers in the crowd that Brother Tong was in too much of a hurry. He even broke down a tree. His attempt to defeat the monster was unsuccessful. Now he was lying near the monster. Kinren touched his forehead with his hand, thinking about what a fool this Brother Tong was. Didn't the Golden Seal recruit nerds into the sect for him? Brother Tong, in Kinren's opinion, was more like a noob. A bump appeared on the monster's head from a tree blow. He woke up and got to his feet. A demon flutist was crawling in front of him on his knees. The monster was getting closer to the offender. Other players just watched it. One thought Brother Tong's pose was funny, because that's how they get up and pray for the new year. The other said he didn't think the beast would attack. The demon flutist opened one eye, then raised his head, looking up questioningly. The monster began to stomp. Even the ground shook. It was like an earthquake. The players did not understand what was happening. The demon lifted the leg under which the body of the crushed Brother Tong lay. His soul left its container, looking at what was happening in surprise. The monster was breathing heavily, and then pressed his head to the ground where his prey was. The students realized that the monster had killed Brother Tong, and he did it in a split second. Someone began to doubt that these are really monsters for beginners, because they look more like bosses. Kinren began to speak. The students, in his opinion, probably thought that it was difficult or even impossible to kill this monster. However, the head of the sect reported that Shuang Huao is the weakest monster within a radius of 15 kilometers. But the students began to chatter in response, believing that Kinren must be joking since he calls this monster the weakest. Now this game seemed very difficult to them, but the cultivator assumed that this was how his disciples would react. Then he decided that he needed to show the students how their master himself would deal with Shuang Huao. Kinren resolutely walked towards the monster. When he got closer, the monster looked at him. At the same moment, the monster's eyes widened and sparkled. He stood up and, making a loud sound, opened his mouth, from which drool flew. Even the cultivator's clothes were fluttering due to the rising wind. The monster fell silent, but still stared fiercely at the cultivator who was standing in front of him. Shuang Huao struck, crumbling the ground under him. Stones jumped into the air and flew apart. With this, he did not cause any harm to Kinren, because he deftly jumped right on the monster's back. Now he was moving around the monster, and his leg was shrouded in a green haze. He kicked off the beast's body with his foot and immediately found himself on the ground behind the opponent's back. He turned around, glaring angrily at the cultivator. He struck a crushing blow again, but Kinren jumped into the air and was not injured. He stretched out his hand, in which something gradually began to form. A green circle with sparks formed in his hand, from which the Kai King Chuan sword soon appeared. The green blade of the sword was reflected in the monster's eye. Kinren, being on his back, slashed his entire huge body with his sword. Blood gushed out. Kinren, surrounded by the green glow and the enemy's blood, stood with his arm outstretched. The monster collapsed to the ground. Because of such a fall, the dust around it rose into the air. Kinren, who was already on the ground, was still standing with the sword in his hands. After that, the sword began to disappear. The students opened their mouths and looked at the master, who had dealt with the monster so quickly that he had previously seemed incredibly strong to them. Now they started shouting Kinren's name, praising him and his cool sword. It seemed incredible to them. Kinren turned to the disciples of the Huaxi sect, asking if they remembered everything. There was an uproar among the students. Does Brother Ren really want to teach them this? Will they become as beautiful as he is? The students now wanted to follow their brother and study hard. Kinren was pleased with the result of his work. The first stage was completed. In the hall of the Huaxi sect, a disciple who had died earlier began to appear. Brother Tong came back and didn't understand what was going on yet. After that, he was torn with indignation. It's crazy, how can a monster at the start kill a player in a few seconds? He intended to go out and wanted to take the others with him. But he quickly discovered that he was alone here. There was no one else around. It quickly dawned on him that he was the only one who had died, and everyone else was still at the foot of the mountain. No one else died but him. He said with displeasure that now he would have to go down and look for other players. But this time he wanted to explore the map around. The demon flutist found himself next to the warehouse of techniques. He looked at it, thinking that maybe he could learn some technique. He decided that this was a legendary opportunity, and he himself was probably the chosen one. Brother Tong entered the building, looking around in surprise. It was dark here, only light from the open doors penetrated inside. Looking at the pile of books and debris that were lying on the floor, the player concluded that it was very dirty here. It upset him. He knelt down, his gaze fell on the blue book. The player took this item in his hands, enthusiastically shaking off the dust from it. He expected to see something else, but his eyes narrowed when he looked at the name. He decided that it was some kind of super powerful technique with which he could take over this world. However, it was just a technique for movement. Indeed, the book in his hand was about the technique of rapid movement. Upset by such a find, the demon flutist threw the book on the floor, calling it garbage and saying that even a dog would not teach such a thing. With quick steps, he walked away, leaving the book he found lying on the floor. The warehouse was empty. The doors were still open. Very quickly, the demon flutist changed his mind, returning inside and grabbing the blue book again. Now he looked at her doubtfully, noticing that even for free he would not teach this technique. In the next scene, with a book in his hands, a demon flutist was walking along a path between trees. He opened the book, deciding that he could take a look at its contents once. A voice was suddenly heard behind him. A man was addressing Tong and asking what he was holding. The frightened player began to hide the find. He decided that no one should find out about it. Tong turned around and saw Qin Ren, an NPC, standing nearby and smiling. The student saw Master Ren and excitedly put the book in front of him, showing it to the teacher and saying that he wanted to try to learn this technique. At this time, he was thinking that he should not hide something from the master, otherwise he could be excluded from the test at any moment. Qin Ren saw the book and stretched out his hand. The book instantly flew from the hands of the disciple into the hands of the master. The master read the title, The Technique of Quick Step. He returned the book to the student and turned around, about to leave, after which he said that His is the most common technique in the world of cultivation, and it has no special value. However, for novice cultivators it is a great option, so it can be used for practice. The master also added that the demon flutist can practice in the Gongfa Hall, sit cross-legged and meditate, providing the secret kingdom of Gongfa. He waved his hand as if saying goodbye to the student. The disciple was fascinated by the back of the man, who added that the master can only help pave the way, and the result depends on the disciple himself. Qin Ren turned his head, looking at the player. His last words were that the student needs to work hard, because the result depends only on him. In the hall, Gong Fa Tong was sitting on the floor with an open book. He was not surprised that he did not understand anything. It turns out that you need to meditate. He closed his eyes, adjusting himself and trying to concentrate. Suddenly, a blue glow began to appear above his head. Soon he was standing, and there were silhouettes around him showing the movement technique. The student realized that this is the technique of a quick step. In the next scene, blood is pouring onto the ground. It drips from the hand of a man who is breathing heavily. This guy seems to be seriously injured. His clothes are torn in the area, wounds not only on his shoulder, but also on his head. This disciple had come together in battle with Shuang Huao, who was now rushing straight towards the wounded man. The monster hit the ground in the place where this young man was standing, but he managed to jump aside in time, thereby saving his life. The kid thought he still had a chance, and the monster, glaring at him, glared at him. After a couple of seconds, this kid was already lying on the ground. His dying words were that he was unlucky. Everything would have been different if he had been a little faster. The players were watching this guy from the sidelines. It was Shan Wang. He tried again and again to defeat the monster immediately after the resurrection. This time he failed again. This game seemed very difficult to the players. Those who have already fought with this monster have come to the conclusion that at this speed it is simply impossible to overcome it. Someone said that it is, and the one who can defeat this beast will definitely become a hero. It was Brother Tong who appeared at the foot of the mountain, who resolutely said that the title of hero was quite suitable for him. It was already clear to everyone that speed was the key to victory, and it was worth thanking Shan Wang for such a hint. Brother Tong was heading towards the monster, and the players were asking if he knew how to defeat Shuang Huao. The demon flutist only replied that he should receive the title of hero in addition to his title of died first. He admitted to the players that he had learned a technique that could increase his speed. Preparing for the start, Tong confidently said that he would be the first to kill the monster in this game. The monster stood motionless. Tong rushed at him at breakneck speed. Shuang Huao's eyes widened in surprise. According to observers, it looked promising. They decided that Shuang Huao was scared and wished their friend good luck, hoping that he would kill the beast. But Brother Tong failed. The monster hit him with his nose. He flew high into the air. The players only looked at this failure, distorting their faces with discontent. The demon flutist died again. He went berserk, shouting that he was tired of this shit game. Afterwards, he noticed Shan Wang, who had also died earlier, and asked him if he was tired of dying and why he was in such a hurry to meet his death. Shan Wang, without turning around, began to tell a story. Once a climber, George Mallory, was asked by journalists why he needed to climb Mount Everest. Shan Wang asked Tong if he knew what the climber said, but immediately gave the answer, because it exists. According to George, life should be full of challenges. So now that Shan Wang has a task before him, he feels that he must fulfill it. It was a challenge for him, After all that was said, he decided to hit the road. Tong, who was pulling his hand towards his friend, asked him to wait. He hesitantly said that for Shan Wang's perseverance, he would make an exception and teach him one important skill. Meanwhile, the other disciples at the foot of the mountain were discussing Brother Tong's failure. Even though he became faster, he was still killed in a matter of seconds. Someone said that he was simply not destined to fight. All his attempts were in vain. One of the students told the guys that they needed to change their strategy. The students heard the sentence and began to turn around in the direction of the person who was saying it. That young man was Manhwa. He was a legendary strategist in various MMORPG games. His guild occupied countless of the first monster kills in the dungeons. The players couldn't believe that this person was really Manhwa. Everyone thought that someone just took his nickname. Now there was growing confidence among the players that with the help of Manhwa, they would be able to defeat Manhwa. Manhwa spoke again. He asked if anyone had said that they should fight without weapons. He offered to make a battle formation and put himself forward as a leader, and now he was asking how this idea was for other players. Meanwhile, the other two players were coming down the stairs. Tong was thinking that this guy, Shan Wang, had learned the quick step technique in just 20 minutes, although it took Tong himself an hour to do the same. Now Shan Wang had become even stronger. The demon flutist wanted to see how Shan Wang would kill Manhwa. The two finally arrived at the foot of the mountain, where the monster lived. Here, one person was in charge of all the others. He was telling the Rock Shield group to hold back Manhwa's attack. A group of spearmen were ordered to attack from the side and from behind, and the rest were to continue to look for an opportunity to attack together with everyone and inflict maximum damage. Manhwa has been doing a great job of commanding the players so far. The group with shields tried their best to restrain the monster. The spearmen attacked from the other side, doing everything as they were told. Manhwa told those who had already broken equipment to immediately run to him for a new one, since there was no time to lose in the fight against Manhwa. The battle was in full swing. Shan Wang watched from the side, saying that the guys would not be able to continue at the same pace. In his opinion, even if there are a lot of people, but the average strength is low, in any case, the players will lose. Tong listened attentively to his comrade. The monster was fighting back against the attackers. Manhwa told the Rock Shield group to keep holding on while the rest had to attack again and again. He himself thought that their situation was unenviable, because the spearmen simply did not have time to attack. One disciple told Manhwa that there were less than a third of them left, and another reported that they had only one spear left, and the rest seemed to have equipment left. Manhwa commanded again, this time telling everyone remaining to head towards him and prepare for the final attack. In front of everyone, he rushed at the enemy with a spear, shouting for everyone else to attack too. The monster was looking at a bunch of people, breathing heavily. He got up on his hind legs, intending to trample everyone in his path. Manhwa, standing right next to the danger, seemed quite alarmed. He looked up at the beast calling above him. Shan Wang concluded, this is definitely the end. He and Tong were still watching from the sidelines for everything that was happening here. The monster struck a crushing blow. After the blow inflicted by the monster, only the lifeless bodies lying on the ground remained from a bunch of people. All the players died. Brother Tong, now lying on the ground, said with chagrin that their entire formation had been destroyed, and also added that if he had not been so far away, he would have been able to deliver the final blow. This boss seemed invincible to him. In front of Tong's face were only the legs of Shan Wang, who was standing next to a comrade who had paid on the ground. He turned to Tong, deciding to tell him the truth. While this is a game, there is no invincible boss that cannot be defeated, and while Shan Wang is playing, he feels the need to win this battle, because this monster boss just exists. The players who had fallen on the battlefield began to appear in the hall of the Huaxi sect. Qin Ren was standing there as well. Manhwa began to doubt himself, already beginning to think that his legendary nickname was just a joke. Even though so many people have teamed up against one monster, they still haven't managed to defeat it. Even with the number one leader, they still lost this fight. Someone started clapping. Qin Ren addressed the disciples of his sect, saying that now they know how cruel this world is. The master stood in front of the players and continued to speak, saying that even with the cultivation of the peak of the Kai purification sphere, it still takes a lot of strength and effort to defeat Manhwa. Of course, it is impossible to cope with this at the initial stage of body hardening. He gave the reason why he gave his students this task. It is so that they understand the truth. Cultivation is not easy. The master said that from now on they should follow his instructions, do what he tells them to do. Suddenly, an alert came from the system. The progress of the quest kill Manhwa has increased. One monster out of 100 was exposed by someone. This caused even Qin Ren to be surprised. Not to mention the other players who couldn't believe that there was someone who could defeat this beast. One of the students turned to Ren, suggesting that there must be something wrong with the system. The master thought about it. Mentally, he turned to the Heavenly Tao to find out from him what had happened. The answer came immediately. Everything is as it was said in the notification. Someone was able to defeat Manhwa. The voice also added that he was not a Heavenly Tao, but a golden seal of discovery. Then grumbling followed again, because the press will get tired of it if Qin Ren asks something constantly. That's why the Golden Seal decided to give Ren permission so that he could immediately see the specific situation with the quest. Qin Ren again asked questions. Did someone really defeat Shuang Huao? Who is he and how did he do it? The Golden Seal was only indignant, because it seemed to her that Qin Ren was not listening to her at all. To the students, this state of affairs seemed impossible. Zhenhua was sure that it was Shan Wang, only he could defeat this monster. It seemed quite real to the others. Shan Wang could really defeat the monster, but how did he do it? Is he a cheater? Besides, he wasn't here now, which meant he wasn't dead. It was still hard to believe. Qin Ren's original plan was to break the spirit of the disciples with this impossible task, then force them to move on to the next stage, to cut wood and mine stone, rebuild the sect. However, now his plans have changed. Qin Ren asked the disciple who was talking about Shan Wang to take him to this person. Tong stood next to the defeated monster, asking if he was really dead. The other students arrived at their destination, immediately seeing Tong and Shan Wang here. Shuang Huao's corpse also did not go unnoticed. Shan Wang himself was sitting on it, and Tong was standing on the ground next to him. Tong was cheerful, and Shan Wang was smiling smugly, watching the reaction of his comrades. Zhenhua made sure that this was indeed the person he was talking about. Qin Ren asked the disciple if he had defeated Shuang Huao himself. The disciple jumped off the corpse, landing next to the master, and said that it was true he himself defeated the beast, although it was quite difficult. Qin Ren thought that this player was undoubtedly still in the Kai purification stage. It really seemed unusual to defeat Shuang Huao with a power that is only at this stage of Kai purification. Qin Ren asked the student if he could defeat another monster to show the others how he did it. The student looked resolutely at the teacher and promised to try to do it. Everyone, including Qin Ren, watched from afar as Shan Wang approached the sleeping monster. He stopped. There was a stone lying near his foot, which was immediately picked up. With a stone in his hand, the disciple looked at the monster, saying that this area was flat and open. It was perfect. He threw a stone, hitting Shuang Huao right in the head. The monster immediately woke up and began to rise. Shan Wang's actions seemed ridiculous to someone, because he used the stone to fight the enemy. Zhenhua watched carefully and asked the commentator to be silent. Meanwhile, the beast was rushing at the one who dared to disturb him, and Shan Wang was watching and waiting. When the monster was very close, the student dodged its attack. Only stones flew in all directions. Zhenhua tensely followed Shan Wang's movements. Shan Wang did not let up. The monster also did not want to retreat. The actions of the student seemed unusual despite the fact that it is difficult to dodge such direct attacks. This minimizes damage. The monster struck again. Dust rose around and the ground shook. Shan Wang, being on the side, struck Shuang Huao's muzzle. It's really like cutting on the edge of a knife. Qin Ren understood everything. This is a fighting style based on the technique of quick step. During the monster's attack, you can save stamina by using only precise evasions. It's just that Shan Wang not only uses the quick step to increase the movement speed, but also increases the strike distance, thereby strengthening his attack. That is why even low-level learning techniques can be very useful. Shan Wang was very fast. He moved so that he was almost invisible. Shuang Huao did not have time to touch him. Shan Wang did not receive a single blow during the battle, while Shuang Huao himself had already received several blows. The disciples had no doubts now. Shan Wang could definitely kill this monster. Everyone was sure of it. The student was standing in front of the monster, and the monster was looking at him. Shuang Huao was preparing to attack, and Shan Wang knew that he had to be ready, because the enemy would use a large-scale attack. Qin Ren calmly watched. The faces of the other students reflected surprise. Angrily looking at his opponent, Shuang Huao struck, but the disciple jumped up, again not even allowing himself to be hurt. This tactic of his amazed observers. Shan Wang used the hatchet, from above striking a decisive blow right on the monster's head. Shuang Huao fell, his eyes rolled back. The notification from the system came again. The progress of the quest kill Shuang Huao, 2 out of 100. After his victory, the disciple carefully lowered himself to the ground. Smiling and crossing his arms over his chest, Qin Ren said that it was not bad. After winking at everyone gathered, Shan Wang asked if they had learned what had been demonstrated to them. Qin Ren was almost indignant. How dare this disciple imitate him? The crowd shouted the winner's name, called him Superman and said that it was damn great. The crowd surrounded their hero. Someone remembered him. This is Shan Wang, aka the King of the Mountains, abbreviation, COM. A COM that has set countless speedrun records for super complex games. There were even his fans here. They did not expect that he also plays online games. Qin Ren watched from the sidelines, concluding that Shan Wang seemed to have a very good reputation. Suddenly something else caught the master's attention. One of the students, who was behind the master, turned to him, deciding to say something to him. Someone was standing near the body of the defeated monster, but most of the students crowded around the hero of the day. Qin Ren coughed to get everyone's attention and say something. He did it. The students looked in the direction of the master. Shan Wang listened respectfully to the master. He thought about it, and then announced that Shan Wang not only committed the first murder, but also conducted a demonstration of milking other students. He really did an excellent job, so after completing the mission he will receive an additional bonus. And also the one who commits the most murders will receive an additional bonus. The disciple thanked the master, and he said that he hoped that Shan Wang would be able to help other disciples of the sect learn how to fight. Shan Wang asked the master not to worry about this. The master turned around, preparing to leave and thinking that all they needed was a positive attitude. Finally, he said that he would look forward to success from his students. After the master left, the disciples crowded around Shan Wang again. Now they were asking to be taught how to fight. Someone was going to throw the video to everyone after returning, hoping that they would bookmark it and put a 10. Some students were walking away, and Shan Wangi addressed them through the crowd surrounding them, saying that the master had asked him to teach everyone martial techniques. Did they really not want to try? The student with 82 fu said that battles were not for him and that the master had assigned them another task. Shan Wang sadly looked after them, wanted to object something, but another student said that Shan Wang should leave him because there really is a better case for him, so do not try to convince him. Shan Wang had no choice. He immediately agreed. Sunny clear weather. Birds are sitting on the roof of the building. Tong was outside the main hall of the Kingshuan sect and was cursing. He was upset because he was the first to discover the quick step technique, but in the end, Shan Wang coped with the task. And Tong can't learn his fighting style in any way. Tong was also confident that this amazing cultivation game would be a hit in the future, so if he couldn't close the gap now, all the bonuses would be snapped up. Suddenly, Tong began to look around, having discovered something. Here it is, what he was looking for. Meanwhile, at the foot of the mountain, Shan Wang was standing in front of another monster. While the other disciples were training at a fast pace, he was going to kill another two-horned beast. Shan Wang called the enemy to him, saying that he already knew all his movements by heart. Suddenly, an alert came that another monster had been destroyed. This caused Shan Wang to be surprised. He was distracted. Shuang Hua was already rushing towards him at full speed. The disciple did not have time to react and met with a powerful monster attack, which instantly threw him into the air. Shan Wang died and appeared in the sect hall, annoyed that he had lost so stupidly, distracted by the notification. Brother Tong was also standing in the same hall. He seemed pleased and hummed some melody. Shan Wang realized that it was Brother Tong who committed the murder, so he decided that he had found some other new technique. Other students were discussing the new alert. They were thinking about who had committed another murder. The answer seemed obvious. It was Shan Wang. Meanwhile, Shan Wang was rushing to where the monsters live. He decided that he needed to act quickly, since Tong had probably found some new technique. The notification came again. Another murder. Shan Wang was shocked again, because he hadn't even managed to descend the steps yet. Brother Tong appeared from behind, happy and smiling all over his face. Shan Wang couldn't figure out how Tong had committed murder again. The disciple did not want to screw up. He believed that he simply had to kill the next beast right now. However, he was outpaced again. An alert came about the fifth monster killed. How is this even possible? Right now, Shan Wang was fighting the monster with all his might, dodging its attacks and thinking that it was not so easy to cope with the two-horned beast. A few students stood away from the hype and practiced. One of them said that they were almost done with a quick step, so they could try to kill the two-horned beast. Another suggested looking at Shan Wang again first. The alert came again. 6 beasts out of 100 was killed. The disciple was amazed at how quickly Shan Wang copes with killing monsters. However, it came to mind that they had all already seen how Shan Wang copes with enemies. It takes him a lot of time. Now, in such a short period of time, someone has already committed as many as 4 monsters. Someone suggested that other masters had appeared. At that moment, the students noticed Brother Tong, who was walking, looking around. They wondered what this guy was doing secretly from everyone. It was suspicious. The students decided that something was definitely wrong here. They all decided to follow Tong unnoticed to find out what he was doing. The bushes rustled. Tong was making his way through them. He found another two-horned beast and was now chuckling contentedly. From the same bushes, Tong was being watched. 5 pairs of eyes stared at him, deciding that Brother Tong was going to fight the monster again. Tong rushed at the beast. He was sleeping, and then abruptly opened his eyes, opening his mouth wide. Tong, as if expecting this, jumped right into the monster's mouth. He slammed his mouth shut. A loud sound rang out. The guys watching from the bushes did not understand what kind of noise it was. Blood flowed from Shuang Huao's mouth, after which he collapsed. The alert came again. 7 monsters out of 100 were killed. The heads of the students appeared from behind the bushes, who looked questioningly at everything that had happened. It was now obvious that Brother Tong was carrying out these murders, but how did he manage it? They didn't understand anything at all, so it was decided to calm down, behave quietly, wait and see again how Tong would kill the monster. Another alert. 8 monsters out of 100 were killed. And again, the students did not understand anything. The monster just ate Brother Tong and died. Did Brother Tong do something? One of the guys thoughtfully adjusted his glasses. He came out of the bushes, declaring that he understood everything, that he had solved this riddle. Another yelled at him, saying that he might be noticed. But the guy didn't care. He moved further away from the bushes while the other students asked him to come back, because there was a two-horned beast. The guy with glasses started saying that in fact they all missed one important detail. They always had the best weapon against the two-horned beast. He thought he understood what the truth was, and came very close to the enemy. With that, he seriously informed that human flesh is poison for these monsters. Other students wondered if this could be true. Meanwhile, the guy with glasses landed right in the mouth of Shuang Huo and he began to chew him. The students watched with excitement. Will it really work? Is it really as this kid said? But nothing happened. The monster just chewed his lunch, followed by only a belch. The students frowned, silently watching. The eaten boy is resurrected. He did not see any notification about the murder and realized that his conclusion was incorrect. However, it was not so important to him because he still had a plan B. He decided to wait. Meanwhile, the 9th murder has already occurred. After that, Brother Tong appeared in the hall of the Huexi sect, where a guy with glasses was waiting for him. It was Zhang Dan. He was hiding behind a pillar and was about to reveal the secret of how Tong triumphs over the two-horned beast. Tong looked around, then began to sneak into the building. Zhang Dan, who had been following him all this time, was watching from the bushes and began to understand what was happening. This was the Qingshuan sect's alchemy hall. Going inside, Tong took a ball, laughed contentedly, hit it, and then left. However, Zhang Dan had already figured out his secret. The singing of birds was interrupted only by the exclamations of the students, to whom Zhang Dan told about the Tong method. He told me about the pill. One of the students was looking at this small object, saying that Brother Tong was relying on it. After that, he said that he also wanted to become stronger, and immediately put this pill in his mouth. Zhang Dan did not have time to stop his comrade. When he died, Zhang only said in chagrin that he had not told him to eat this pill. The student explained to the other two that what he was holding in his hands were powder pills that were eaten by a two-horned beast, which was why he died because of the explosion inside. One of the students said that Brother Tong just put a powder pill on his body and jumped into the mouth of a two-horned beast. Now the same student has decided that he has a better idea. He went out to the two-horned beast, openly declaring that he was going to kill him. Comrades watched these actions, hiding in the bushes. The beast quickly reacted to the player's cry. It opened its mouth wide, making a loud sound. It seemed to the student that this was a great chance, so he swung and threw the pill. It hit right on target, falling on the monster's tongue. The monster closed its mouth. The student, pleased with himself, concluded that there was no point in putting himself in danger because you can make an accurate throw. However, soon the two-horned beast spat out the item, it didn't work, and now the enemy was running at the disciple, attacking him. The boy flew into the air because of the blow, saying out loud what everyone had already noticed without him. The monster just spat out a pill. Zhang Dan called this guy an idiot, because Brother Tong would not climb into the monster's mouth if such a method worked. The disciple who stayed with Dan suggested that he do exactly the same as Brother Tong did. Dan agreed, but first decided that they needed to hide the unused pills. The notification of a new murder has come. Tong Joyous was in the sect hall, saying that he had killed another one. This was immediately followed by 2 alerts, 2 new kills, and the progress of the task, 12 out of 100. Tong was surprised by the 2 murders that followed each other. He decided that it was Shan Wang who was already so strong. However, he noticed that 2 players appeared in the sect. Something immediately cleared up in his head. The other students also discussed the murders happening very quickly. Someone thought that he was all the work of Shan Wang, but how could he become so strong so quickly? Something is clearly wrong here. Qin Ren was in the head of the sect's office, and Tufu was there, who reported that he had taken care of everything. He showed the skins to the master. Qin Ren said that it looked really perfect, really good work. These skins are a valuable resource for making leather armor, storage bags, and other containers. He also added that Tufu and other disciples who helped him made a great contribution to the development of the sect, so at the end of the mission they will deservedly receive their reward. The students thanked the head. Tufu turned to the head, saying that, in his opinion, the students passed the assigned task too quickly. The 2-horned beast is quite large. They do not have time to remove the skin from one, as they are dragged 2 more. Because of this, the quality of the skin deteriorates. The carcass is left for a long time without removing the skin immediately. Qin Ren concluded that this was very strange. It was amazing that a 2-horned beast could be defeated by someone with a hidden realm, but now they were even faster to kill. The master instructed Tufu to find more students who can't fight, so that they too skin, because it's not worth wasting material. Tufu obeyed. After that, other students came, who also had already done what the master asked for. They put down the bones they had brought with them and showed him. These were the bones of a 2-horned beast. They are very hard and serve as a good material for equipment. Qin Ren also promised to reward these students at the end of the mission. Gu Wang, one of them, thanked the master. Meanwhile, the girl, Xiao Chunyan, was calling everyone to her because she had cooked the meat of a 2-horned beast. Now everyone had to try it. This did not go unnoticed by the man who was standing behind the girl. This man, Zhang Ren, drooled and said that it smelled so delicious that he really wanted to taste a piece. However, Gu Wang informed Zhang Ren that the head wanted to see him. Zhang Ren was a little saddened by this news. Qin Ren was drinking tea in his office when someone came to him. It was a frustrated Zhang Ren, asking if the head was looking for him. Ken Ren didn't understand what was wrong with this man and why he looked like he had lost his soul. He can still work, right? The master replied that he really called him, and then invited him to look at the raw materials and asked what things he could make from what was available here. Giant Ren looked at the bones and skins. He answered by starting the enumeration: spears, swords, daggers, bone whips, shields and armor. All this he can make from the available raw materials. According to him, a total of 10 pieces of equipment and several backpacks can be made. Ken Ren chuckled, noticing how quickly this man's mood changed. Behind the wall, someone shouted a disgruntled curse. Some person was indignant, asking who it was. Outside the sect hall, already at the foot of the mountain, Tong was torn with anger, asking who had robbed him. A student who approached Tong asked what had happened to him. An alert came from the system: 4 more new murders, total task progress 18 out of 100. It seemed incredible. However, Tong already understood what was going on. He poured curses on the unfortunate thief. The same disciple asked Brother Tong again what had happened. Zhang Dan, standing in the crowd, adjusted his glasses and chuckled contentedly, thereby attracting the attention of some players. He started talking to Brother Tong, told him that he had learned how to kill monsters in his way, and this way is much better than to Shan Wang. Tong asked with displeasure, "Does Dan think he has learned?" "Yes, this guy is just a thief. Dan is just a Tong not to say so, because the resources belong to each of them." A commotion began to rise among the students. They did not understand what was happening, but it began to dawn on them that these 2 horned beasts had been killed by Brother Tong. However, the method remained unknown. Zhang Dan also said that he would tell everyone the truth if the students wanted it. After that, it became known to everyone that Tong hid powder bullets on his body and so rushed into the monster's mouth. Among the students began to discuss what they had heard. Brother Tong was called reckless. Someone thought that his way was too strange, and someone on the contrary said that it was brilliant. However, the disciples decided to move, because they knew that in any case they would be resurrected. Now they must arrange a human bombardment of the monsters. The entire crowd of players rushed for pills. Someone thanked Brother Tong for this discovery, and he only tried hopelessly to appeal to the guys. Almost everyone ran away, and Brother Tong was very angry. He turned to Dan and started shouting at him, because this idiot told everyone, despite the fact that all the powder pills would immediately be sorted out. How was he going to use this method himself, since everyone knows about it now? Zhang Dan said that Tong was absolutely right, but also added that he did not need these pills. Tong asked what the joke was then. Looking at Tong with a determined and cunning look, Dan said that he had come up with a more effective way, which is why he was ready to sacrifice these pills. And this method consists in the fact that, in the hall of the sect, Shan Wang was reborn again. He was distracted again by the alert when 4 murders occurred in a row. He was lying on the floor and now he hit it with his fist. Already being on the street, he said that he thought he was the strongest here, and did not know that there are many masters stronger than him here. Now he felt he had to work even harder. Suddenly he saw 2 students nearby. They were talking too loudly. One shouted that he just needed to make a show. Dan said there was only one truth: the show-off frog will always touch your stomach. Dan reported that he always enjoyed shocked looks. This sense of superiority for him is the pinnacle of intellectual ostentation. Tong looked at this guy carefully, thinking that he was a little strange, but acknowledging that there was still some meaning in his words. The demon flutist thought that Shan Wang was using the game for training, and Zhang Dan was just enjoying it. Show-off clearly appears in his philosophy. Shan Wang appeared behind Tong, patted him on the shoulder and asked what was going on. Dan smiled, saying that here was another person who did not know the whole truth. Tong turned around, telling the show-off to explain everything to him himself. The guy himself decided to go and see how many powder pills were left. Shan Wang remained silent, only following Tong with his eyes. In the next scene, Shan Wang was already descending the stairs. His face seemed serious. He digested all the information he had received. Powder pills, and everyone copes one-on-one. That's what they were doing while he was trying to fight monsters. He remembered the words of Dan, who said that unlike other games, battles will no longer be the basis in this one. It made him frown. Do they really think that strength is not the most important thing? Shan Wang intended to prove to everyone that this was not the case. He intended to prove that the truth was valid. But while he was descending, another alert came from the system. Then the second, and then a few more. He stopped, startled. The guy concluded that this is a slippery slope, because in this way the guys will not last long. In his opinion, everything still depended on him. 2 more alerts have arrived. Shan Wang said that it was useless anyway, because they have a limited number of powder pills. After that, 2 more alerts followed. Once again, Shan Wang stood and convinced himself that the pills would run out very soon. However, the notifications still did not stop. The progress of the task was already 29 out of 100. The young man clutched his head. How can he fight if he constantly hears this sound? Very soon, progress reached the 99th murder. The sound of the alerts has stopped. Shan Wang froze, realizing that nothing else was happening. He ran down the stairs, thinking that the guys had run out of pills. which undoubtedly pleased him because Shan Wang decided that the last murder would be for him. He quickly found the two-horned monster, thinking that perhaps with this kill he could score the most kills and then get additional bonuses. He looked at the monster, thinking that he would become number one if he killed it. The student was still going to prove to everyone that strength is above all in this game. However, he suddenly saw something that caught his attention. In the monster's mouth was Brother Tong, who had already been chewed up. It was bad, because the last murder was taken away from Van. The monster ate Brother Tong, followed by a belch. There was no explosion, the monster was still alive. Shan Wang decided that this time the method with the pill did not work. He was glad that this stupid weapon did not kill the monster. This was to be expected, because the crooked path would not come to success. Shan Wang shouted, calling the monster to him, saying that his opponent was here and that he, Shan Wang, would defeat him in a worthy way. The two-horned monster was running towards the enemy. The cheerful Shan Wang was just waiting for this, but suddenly blood gushed out of the monster's mouth. The pill worked. The two-horned beast collapsed to the ground right in front of Shan Wang. A notification followed that the progress of the task is 100 out of 100. The task was completed successfully. Shan Wang completely drooped, his face instantly darkened. Near the sect, Xiao Chunyun was cooking a huge two-horned monster on a bonfire. Shan Wang was walking back from the battlefield, drooping and upset. He was walking, looking down. When he approached, Xiao Chunyun shouted at the top of her voice that the barbecue was ready. He looked at what was happening with a sad expression on his face. The guys celebrated the perfect completion of the mission. They flew into the food, devoured the meat, offering a drink to Xiao Chunyun, who cooked such a yummy. Someone in the crowd was also drinking for Brother Tong, because without his sacrifice they would not have been able to win. He just giggled in embarrassment. Shan Wang looked at the players hopefully for a moment, but eventually became sad again. He turned around to leave. However, one of the students noticed him, shouting his name. Shan Wang froze for a moment, then clenched his fists tightly and clenched his teeth, thinking that the guys could say whatever they wanted. The students began to raise their glasses to drink 3 times to the strongest player, Shan Wang. He immediately turned in their direction. The guys looked at him, smiling, and said that if it hadn't been for him, who killed the first two-horned beast, they might have already left this game. They said that it was amazing. It made their blood boil. Shan Wang was the best for them. Xinhua waved to Shan Wang, inviting him to sit down because he had already been poured. There was joy on Shan Wang's face again. He mentally turned to the guys. His eyes shone. This disciple immediately rushed to everyone else. In the next scene, steam was coming from the hot drink. Ken Ren was sitting in his office with his eyes closed. He was thinking that all this had happened in less than 1 day. He already knew that the guys were using powder pills to achieve their goal. Already on the street, one of the students exclaimed that the master was right here. Ken Ren appeared before the disciples of the sect. Tong, who thought that Brother Ren had come to the barbecue, reported that Xiao Chunyun was a great cook. The master called Zhang Tong to him. He immediately came over, saying that he was here. The master asked if Tong was really the first person to kill a two-horned beast with powder pills, after which other students followed his example. Brother Tong thought it was bad because it seemed to him that the master wanted to punish him. Tong immediately became agitated, deciding that the master wanted to punish him for using powder pills in the fight against two-horned monsters. He hoped that the NPC wasn't going to delete his account, because he didn't want to leave this game like that. Xinhua turned to the head, asking if he thought Brother Tong's tactics were inappropriate. Shan Wang also stood up for his friend, saying that regardless of whether a black cat or a white one, a good cat is one that can catch a mouse. Tong looked at his brothers with tears in his eyes, who were protecting him now. Ken Ren looked questioningly at the students, and then asked who said and why they thought he was going to punish Tong. These words of his caused surprise to all 3 of them. The master turned to Zhang Tong again, saying that he had plucked up the courage to try new methods and eventually brilliantly completed the task. In total, he killed 10 two-horned beasts, and contributed the most to the killings. Therefore, the master assigned Tong 10 points and 1 inner pill. The points received can be used as currency in the sect. Tong beamed with happiness. He happily thanked the head and said that he would work even harder. It turned out that they wanted to reward him, not punish him. Shan Wang thought that Brother Tong's method was indeed very effective, although not very correct. The master also made a small remark. The powder pill method cannot be used permanently. To himself, he thought that the pill would eventually run out. Shan Wang rejoiced, deciding that, apparently, the one-on-one battle was still relevant. Now, Ken Ren turned to Shan Wang, who immediately responded. The master said that this disciple had killed 5 two-horned beasts, including the very first one, and had also trained other disciples, so his reward would be an inner pill and 6 points. The student thanked the head and promised to continue to try further. In addition, Ken Ren reported that Tufu, Gu Wang and Zhang Ren have made high-quality equipment for the sect, so each of them receives an internal pill. All 3 thanked the head. For some students, it was a revelation that there is also a reward for making equipment. Xinhua sat silently at the table, leaning on one hand, and sighed heavily. He looked rather sad. The master announced that all the listed awards will be officially issued tomorrow, and new techniques will be. delivered to the Hall of Techniques. He also said that the inner pill is used to improve cultivation, and contribution points are used to exchange items and so on. If the students continue to get the skin of the two-horned beast, the number of points will increase, so the master advised them to work hard to become even stronger. Leaving, Qin Ren turned around and called Xinhua with him. He was no less surprised than the other students. Both came to the clan's office. Xinhua did not hesitate and immediately asked why the head needed him. The master said that although this time the young man was not awarded with an internal pill, it was very clear to everyone that his fighting abilities were extremely outstanding. Qin Ren handed the disciple a scroll, saying that the sect was giving him a task. The master told him to look at the scroll, which the disciple did, concluding that a map was drawn there. The weather was good again, sunny, warm, birds soared in the sky. The disciple was holding an inner pill in his hand. He said that she looked very strange, and thought that she would be disgusting to eat. At this time, behind Tong's back, Shan Wang had already brought the pill to his mouth, intending to eat it. When he swallowed the pill, everyone stared at him to see what would happen to him after that. A red aura rejoiced around Shan Wang. He stood with his eyes closed and clenched fists and seemed very tense, and then abruptly opened his eyes. Everyone started asking if he felt any changes. Looking at his hands, Wang said he felt like he was stronger than before. Also, now he could view personal information. He was looking at a window that popped up near him, in which all his basic information was indicated. He noticed that in the cultivation column he had indicated peak of the hidden Yuan kingdom. He had already reached such a level while someone was only at the initial stage. One of the disciples said that the realms are usually divided into the initial, middle, late and peak stages. This means that Shan Wang has risen 3 levels. Someone said that it's only 3 levels. There's nothing in it that they can't overcome. Another called him an idiot, explaining that in the world of immortals it is difficult to advance even to the first level in the realm. It usually takes at least a year to practice to raise at least the first level, not to mention the fact that it becomes more difficult every time. So, Shan Wang has made a big step forward. Shan Wang was about to leave when he was called and asked where he had gone. He replied that he was going to go and kill the two-horned monster, because only in this way can you find out how much he really became stronger. Shan Wang has already begun to be considered a battle madman. Among the disciples, someone began to wonder what the price of the inner pill was. One of the players approached Tungu, asking if he wanted to sell an internal pill that would be paid for with real money. Chufu, Gu Wang, and Zhang Ren were also asked about selling internal pills. Tong did not agree to sell the inner pill, because he was going to use it himself, but Tufu, Gu Wang and Zhang Ren decided to sell their own because they did not like fighting anyway. The auction has started. Someone offered 100, someone 200, then the bid rose to 400 and then to 500. As a result, there was a person who offered 1,000. This person turned out to be Zhang Dan. Someone asked him why he was giving such money for an item of improvement at an early stage. The young man replied that the rich have their own quirks. Now he was talking to 3 disciples who were going to sell pills. He said that he only needed 1 pill, so the rest of the students should figure it out for themselves. Some students suddenly raised the bid to 2,000. Dan turned around to see who was taking away his superiority. It was Xinhua. He added that he would take all 3 pills. Dan began to get indignant, asking why he needed so many internal pills. Xinhua just spread his hands, saying that the rich have their own quirks. Besides, he didn't say that he was going to use all 3 pills alone. Xinhua started saying that in that case, these 3 inner pills. Dan said that this guy is a damn rich man, so it seems no one else is bidding against him. Tong raised his hand, asking everyone to wait. Dan was in shock, not knowing what to expect from this man. Xinhua became agitated, thinking that Brother Tong was constantly doing some strange things. The young man decided that if Tong raised the price to 3,000, then he would have to raise it to 4,000 to get the pills. Xinhua raised his index finger up, raising the bid to 3,000. The pills should belong to him. Tong and Dan stood in shock. Xinhua noticed that Brother Tong seemed stunned, because he did not expect the price to rise again. The young man was determined to win this auction. Scratching his neck, Brother Tong said that he didn't really want to buy pills. On the contrary, he wanted to sell his own, but since Xinhua is ready to give as much as 3,000 for them, it's worth thanking him for it. Tong said that Xinhua is really good. Xinhua only looked at Brother Tong questioningly. A disciple who had previously wanted to buy a pill from Tong said that he had not previously intended to sell it. Tong explained, he just decided that they wouldn't give much for it. That's why he didn't want to sell, and when he found out that they were offering more than 100 for the pill, he just didn't have time to intervene. But now Tong sold it for 3,000, which he was incredibly pleased with. He thanked Xinhua again. The other students started saying that this young man was very generous. Xinhua smiled nervously, thinking that his reputation as a strategist had been destroyed in this game. In the sect study, a cultivator held an inner pill in his hands. Qin Ren was saying out loud that the task of killing 100 two-horned beasts was completed. He repeated it several times. 100 two-horned beasts. The master looked at the pill and laughed. At some point his laughter, coupled with his facial expression, began to seem creepy. Qin Ren sat thinking and decided that he was a little distracted. There was a large amount of internal pills in front of him. 100 inner pills were extracted from 100 two-horned beasts, but he only gave 5 as a reward. It was a very good deal. The rest of the students can only get points, but as long as they increase the number of points consumed, they will still actively complete tasks. According to Qin Ren, any capitalist would cry from what he saw. Now the head of the sect was at the peak of the Dongming realm. If he took 50 internal pills at once, he would be able to break through the realm and reach the Yaoguan realm. However, he decided to postpone these pills for a while. He touched them and they disappeared. He was looking at his hand. One of the fingers was wearing a ring that had pills in it. He stared at him in silence, lost in memories. Once, Yu returned to him, saying that she had a gift for him. She was hiding something in her hands, and then she held out her palms, showing the ring. Qin Ren then said that it was a priceless storage ring. He asked if the girl really wanted to give it to him. She turned away resentfully, saying that he would not get it if he did not want it. But the young man hurried to convince her he would take it. He would take it. He accepted this gift. The girl agreed, and then said that she was returning to the Ice Palace so soon, because she'd be in trouble if anyone found out she'd snuck out. Qin Ren put the girl's gift on his finger. Right now, he was thinking that his sect should become stronger as soon as possible. Only then would he have the strength to fight the Ice Palace. At the hall of the sect, someone indignantly shouted that this was too much. The students found out that it takes 1 point to study the technique, and it lasts for an hour. The question arose whether the score would be wasted if the student failed to learn the technique. Moreover, there were also those who did not kill two-horned beasts. These people do not have points at all. Tong asked the students to pay attention to the fact that points can be traded. One student shouted at him, saying that they didn't need it, because in the end Tong would still sell them to a rich man who would offer a lot of money, and the others wouldn't get anything in the end. He added that the damned merchants and the damned rich spoil the whole game. Xinhua, approaching Tong and putting his hand on his shoulder, said that he had already bought 5 points from him for 50 yuan, after which he planned to send them to those brothers in the group who do not have points. Everyone started praising Xinhua, the leader of the group and everyone's hero. Someone asked the students to pay attention to the fact that melee fighters should first learn the turtle shell technique. These words were heard. The students understood everything and took into account. Tong watched what was happening. Now so many people are going to the Hall of Technicians. Tong went into the technician's room and found himself alone in the room. Qin Ren probably optimized the system. Now Tong closed his eyes and was ready to start practicing. Glowing silhouettes appeared in front of him, standing in certain poses. It was a turtle shell technique. There was another student standing in front of the Hall of Technicians, who was choosing a technique for practice. He didn't want to study the protective technique of the turtle shell. He thought about the recovery technique, that it was some kind of healing skill. It didn't suit him either. The rapid movement technique seemed to him a good option, but he couldn't believe that it was worth as much as 5 points. Then followed the ice technique. Haramaru looked at it enthusiastically, deciding that it was a skill specially created for him. He liked the ice technique the most, and in the end his choice fell on it. In the next scene on the street, someone was counting 47, 48, 49, 50. The student reported to the leader that all team members had finished their training and gathered. Xinhua said it was great. He led his team resolutely. They were moving in a crowd, but suddenly stopped. The students stared ahead, stunned. Shan Wang was sitting on the many corpses of two-horned beasts. Xinhua asked if he had killed all these monsters. Shan Wang replied that he had killed 25 of them. After that, he jumped to the ground, saying that he was tired and would go to the sect to rest. He really looked unimportant. Jian seemed tired and battered. Leaving, he told the guys to show what teamwork is. Xinhua told Wang to go rest, and when he came down, he wouldn't surprise the two-horned beasts here for a long time. Xinhua also said that there was an update in the Hall of Techniques, so Wang should not forget the new techniques, since he managed to get so many points. One of the students asked why the leader told Shan Wang about this, because they wouldn't be able to catch up with him that way. But Xinhua replied that it was all nonsense. They were all like brothers in the same clan. Shan Wang was already approaching the Hall of Technicians. He concluded that it was not worth overexerting himself so much, because after killing 25 two-horned beasts, he felt so exhausted that he barely climbed the stairs. Haramaru passed by Wang. Shan turned in his direction, surprised. Was it possible to set such a low height in the game? Meanwhile, the fight with the two horns was in full swing. The defeated monster fell to the ground. It turned out again. It was already the 5th beast killed by the Xinhua team. For this, the students thanked Xinhua, who advised them to study the turtle shell technique first, because it is much better to fight longer, rather than die in a few seconds. The leader was absolutely right. Now the team has started searching for other animals in the area. Xinhua thought that it seemed that the first step in the head's mission to control the surrounding resources had been completed. Another beast was found very quickly. Already standing near the beast, Xinhua wondered how this was possible. The monster was shrouded in ice from all sides. It definitely wasn't Shan Wang's work. Then who could have done it? Some student remembered that there was some kind of ice technique in the Hall of Technicians. It turns out there is another strong student. Xinhua was thinking that he didn't have many points, so for safety reasons he mastered the turtle shell technique. But it seems that other skills also seem to be quite useful. The intelligence group sent someone back. The student informed the leader that a mine had been found. Xinhua told everyone who received points to go back and study the ice technique. After forming a ranged group, the rest had to go with the leader to take a point with resources. It was very dark in the mine. Several people have already gone inside. One asked if they could enter the cave without waiting for word from the leader. Another replied that it did not matter, because the leader did not forbid entering the cave and they were just conducting reconnaissance for the team. The three walked forward, further and further. They would not see anything at all if they continued to move deeper. The player who was ahead of everyone said that there was nothing to be afraid of, because this is a great opportunity to achieve success, so they should be bolder. The two stood and looked at the friend's back. He disappeared into the darkness, after which a loud scream was heard. Two guys in a panic started asking what happened. Gods and sorcerers live in the lands of Ashur. The interaction of technology and magic is further advancing the development of the continent. However, 1,000 years ago, wonderful demons appeared and destroyed the harmony of the continent. The war between demons and wizards quickly grew. Only centuries later, the ambassadors of God with the help of magical elements sealed the unearthly beings. After millennia, the seal has visibly weakened and a new catastrophe is looming. The darkness returns. The gods of the elements who saved the world, namely, the god of the elements of the sea, the god of the elements of nature, the god of the elements of the sky, the god of the elements of the earth, the god of the elements of fire, the god of the elements of the hurricane, and the god of the elements of thunder have long fallen. Hylo Wind became the successor of the god of the elements of the sea. In order to investigate the weakening of the seal, he hides his god power and introduces himself as a new student of the Asgard Academy. But he is not alone in this war. He is also assisted by a ghost girl named Shields. It was already the middle of the night outside. The academy building was illuminated by a full moon. The main character was looking for a book in the academy library. One by one, he threw aside the books that did not fit him. The guy still couldn't find what he needed and it really annoyed him. And in the end, he finally found that very book. But it turned out to be sealed by magic. An unusual magic, but first class. The guy decided that he would try to remove the seal. With the help of his sea element magic, he tried to remove the seal using the sea seal and ordered it to dissipate. At first he thought that he had failed, but then the seal began to dissipate. Suddenly the guy saw a drawing on the book and was very surprised. He could not understand how this book appeared in school. At that moment Shields appeared next to him. She really scared the guy, so much so that he dropped all the books from his hands and screamed. Hylo asked the girl not to appear so unexpectedly anymore. She told him he was too slow. The guy asked the girl if she should also lower the wind outside. The girl replied that the guy was standing still all the time and she was tired of waiting. Hylo apologized and smiled. The girl said she would give him another 10 minutes and that the guy needed to hurry up. Hylo looked again at the book that had fallen out of his hands. Suddenly, a black fog appeared in the room. At that moment, a huge snake was approaching the guy, but he did not see it, as he was busy studying a book. The guy bent down to the fog and began to study it. He touched it and noted to himself that the fog was quite viscous. At the last moment, when the snake was almost attacking the guy, he turned around and noticed it. Hylo assumed that the beast was attracted by that very book. At that moment, a girl appeared in the room again. She could not understand what had happened and assumed that black magic was involved here. The girl became worried about Hylo and moved to him. Suddenly, someone started heading to the library. At that moment, the guy was standing in front of the snake. He suggested that the snake is the black magic that is sealed in that book, namely the magic of illusions. The snake attacked the guy, but he repelled its attack by using his magic of the oceans. Thus, the snake, instead of biting the guy, bit the ball out of the water. After the guy realized that the snake can cause physical damage, he realized that this is not the magic of illusions, but the magic of summoning. At that moment, the girl approached the guy and said that an inspector was coming to the library and they should immediately retreat. Only after that the girl noticed that there was a huge black snake in the room and was scared. She asked Hylo about what she was doing here and where she came from, but he didn't answer anything, since the guy needed to leave the library urgently. He began to call on the elves who live in the ocean to help him defeat the snake. A strong stream of water hit the snake and hit it right in the mouth. It worked and the snake was killed. At that moment, the inspector was already approaching the library and heard a voice coming from there. He went into reading room number 3. Shields heard footsteps approaching and realized that things were bad. The girl told the guy to hurry up as the inspector will enter the room any minute. The guy realized that it was bad and with the help of his sea magic quickly got out of the library. At that moment, the inspector entered the room and began to talk about the fact that visiting the library late at night should be reported in advance. However, when he entered the room, he saw no one in it and nothing but a mess. The inspector could not understand how it all happened and why there was no one in the room. Once the land of Ashur was clean, the walking people lived together with the sorcerer gods. The intersection of technology and magic was supposed to lead to the development of civilization. However, thousands of years ago, a demon clan suddenly attacked the lands of Ashur. This caused a war between demons and sorcerers. Many powerful sorcerers and high-level spirits have united in order to resist the demons, and although the army of demons was restrained from spreading, the battle did not come to a standstill and the 100 Years' War began, until the first magic academy of the country Asgard was founded. The academy combined all the defenses of the country and finally sealed the demons. This information was told by the teacher in class, while Hilo fell asleep. The teachers were angered by this and he created the illusion of a snake attacking Hilo. Because of this, Hilo woke up. The teacher told the guy that if he was so smart, he could tell the whole class about the first big event at the academy after its foundation. The teacher was angry that Hilo had fallen asleep on the magic story and asked him if he really thought it was some kind of lullaby. The teacher had a fight and said that if the guy wants to sleep, then let him come out and do it in the corridor. Hilo rubbed his eyes and thought that people who do all their chores in the middle of the night don't need a lullaby to fall asleep. After that, the teacher continued to speak and said that in this way, the demons were sealed until today, restoring order to the earth. Hilo was punished for falling asleep in class. Hilo was in a scar because the demons who were sealed by the talisman began to get out. After school, the guy stood against the wall in the corridor in full view of everyone, and the students passing by laughed at him. Hilo thought that all this happened because of that big snake in the library that attacked him at night. Shield suddenly appeared. She also began to laugh at the guy and called him the Sea Lord. She said that the fact that Hilo was punished was very annoying. After that, the girl asked if she should tell everything that happened to Grandpa Hai and the others so that they would spare Hilo from punishment. The guy replied that the girl should not say such a thing, because if it were not for grandfather, he would not have found himself in such a situation at the Asgard Academy. After Shield saw that the guy was upset, she began to support him. Shield said that next to Hilo there is a very powerful spirit partner, namely herself, who follows him everywhere. She said that the guy should pull himself together and pull himself together. However, after that, the girl thought that despite her words, he needed to find the reason why the talisman had weakened. She also thought that she would have to face an unknown enemy and she must protect Hilo at all costs. Shields wanted to turn to the guy and say that he should forget everything she said to him. But when she turned around, she found that the guy was no longer there and was surprised at how quickly he left. The guy was walking and thinking that he always sees the same drawing everywhere. Suddenly Shields yelled at the guy and told him to stop ignoring her. In response to this, Hilo replied that, in fact, the bell for recess had already rung. The girl asked the guy how he could say such a thing and reminded him that even if Hilo is the only acting ruler, he still holds the title of Lord of the Seas. Shields also added that he has the ability to ride the waves, summon the life of the seven seas, and even the beasts of the abyss will listen to his call, and he thinks only about the seal all the time. The girl asked the guy if he was sure he had seen the seal sign. In response to this, he said that he could not be mistaken, because he had seen this sign before on a sealed book in Grandpa Hai's collection. The girl replied that once it was the seal that plunged the country's secret organization into chaos. Their actions were suspicious, and their tracks were all over the country. But everything connected with it disappeared without a trace after the war. The girl asked the guy if he thought that the seal had something to do with the weakening of the talisman. Hilo replied that Grandpa Hai's guesses must be correct. This academy has already been imbued with an unknown force. A guy and a girl were walking down the street. At that moment Shields turned into a kitten. She said that being in human form is much more convenient for her. The girl told Hilo that he looked very thoughtful and asked him if he was thinking about printing. The guy replied that the fact that the seal appeared in the academy library indicates its connection with the academy itself. But since he's new to this place, he can't get enough useful information and couldn't figure out which direction he should move in now. The girl at this moment in the guise of a kitten was sitting on Hilo's shoulder. Suddenly she said that the guy smells unusual and yesterday there was no such smell. This made the girl think and seemed very strange to her. Suddenly, someone on the street shouted that everyone should make way and give way so as not to interfere with Miss Cindy's walk. The guy and the girl looked in that direction and saw the carriage. A girl with blonde hair and a guy with the same blonde hair, who looked like her brother, got out of this carriage. Shields asked Hilo about who it was and why there was such a big crowd around her. The guy replied that it was Cindy Sandal, member of the student council of the Asgard Academy. Cindy stood in front of the academy's doors and looked at her. The girl was glad that she had finally returned to the academy and would be able to meet her dear sister, who was probably very tired of waiting for her. Cindy literally dreamed of meeting her little sister and was very glad that she had finally arrived. After that, the girl announced the first report for the director of the academy on the results of the inspection of their branches. After that, the girl thought that, apparently, this old man again leaked unnecessary information. This almost led to the failure of the mission. She would have to punish him later. The girl also thought that if it wasn't for her precious sister, she would have already skinned him and fed him to the beasts. Suddenly, the girl felt some kind of smell. She went into the crowd, to the place where the smell came from. At this time, Shields was sitting on the guy's shoulder and asked him if he should get closer to the vice president of the student council. She said the guy could fake an identity. Hilo said that the members of the student council are constantly in public, and Grandpa Hai told them to keep their heads down, since they violated the border treaty in a sense. After the Great Demon War, every spirit and god was forced to sign a treaty called the Boundary Treaty, which forbade them to leave their historical lands, and Hilo, the man who became a god, accidentally breached this system. At that moment, Cindy was making her way through the crowd to reach Hilo in shields. The girl called the guy, came closer to him and started sniffing him. The girl asked the guy if he was a newcomer to this academy. The guy answered positively. After that, the girl told him to go with her to the meeting room. She also added that the guy can't refuse. 4 heads were sitting in a dark room. They looked very strange. One of them looked like death with a sign, and all the others were just flying heads. Near the man in the robe sat the same snake that attacked the guy in the library. The man in the robe said that little miss from the Sandal family had found a newcomer who was hiding in the library. They were thinking about what they should do now. One of the heads said that the Sandal family gave them a lot of problems and this newcomer with an unknown past. The head added that their actions may be limited. In response, the man in the robe said that there was no need to worry, because the smell was already imprinted and now they should just wait for the two to start fighting each other. Cindy stood in the Askar Negotiation Academy and thought that the aura of the seal emanated from the newcomer. The girl thought that the guy could be a member of those heads, but now she can only find out that he also came into contact with the seal. Suddenly the girl thought that the guy is an agent of those people. 3 days earlier, an explosion occurred in the city. Cindy Sandal was chasing 2 people in robes and masks. These people were floating in the air. They left behind a route. They asked her if their little trip had disturbed the lady. In response, the girl attacked the men with her golden chains with lightning bolts. However, in response, they used black magic and fought off her attacks. They thought that Mrs. Sandal rarely honors them with her presence, but they cannot continue the action since they need to leave. The girl shouted in response that the man did not do this and ordered her assistant Victor to deal with the man. After that, the man said goodbye and disappeared. Cindy's assistant apologized to her for not being able to keep people. In response to this, the girl said that at least they did not let them get their way and first they need to return to the academy. A month has passed since the departure of those people in robes, and the seal has already penetrated some students. The girl asked Hilo about his purpose of arriving at the Aster Academy. The guy was afraid that his essence was revealed, but he was not going to give up. He replied that of course he came to the academy in order to practice his magic, because there are definitely many opportunities in this place. The girl realized that just like that the guy wouldn't listen to her and ordered her assistant to do something. With a flick of his finger, Victor summoned some kind of magic. Hilo realized that it was a high-level magic barrier and the room was completely blocked. Cindy already wanted to kill the guy. At that moment, thunder appeared in the sky. Other members of the student council saw this and realized that Mrs. Sandal was picking on the new guy again. At that moment, in the meeting room, the fighters in golden armor that Cindy had summoned were attacking the guy. But he didn't give up so easily either. The guy easily dodged their attacks. He shouted at the girl not to go that far. After that, the guy used water magic to bind all the knights. The guy turned to the vice president and asked her what she meant. The girl replied that to her surprise, she feels the hidden strength of the guy and he seems to have potential. Hilo realized that the girl was ignoring him. He said that if this continues, he will be forced to go to the professor to sort it out. At that moment, the guy thought that it was good that Shield stayed outside. Suddenly Victor attacked Hilo on the back and hit him on the back of the head. The guy flew into the wall and left a hole in it. Cindy stood and analyzed the battle. She thought about the fact that the guy was able to instantly create a magical barrier and even managed to evade fatal injuries. After that, Hilo returned to the room. He stood up and wiped the blood from his face. The guy looked at his hands covered in blood and realized that his water barrier could cause damage. Hilo didn't know what to do. Hilo stood all wounded. Drops and threads of water were floating in the air around him. Cindy told the guy she was giving him one last chance. She asked him to tell her about Askar's plans. The guy thought that a magic barrier was installed in the room and therefore he was unlikely to be able to escape. And after he uses his powers, it will be quite difficult to avoid suspicion. However, the guy decided that he would not use his powers, then there might not be any later. Cindy ordered Victor to attack Hilo again. The guy created magical silver chains and let them fly towards Hilo from his hands. On one side, Victor, with chains that had sharp blades at the end, was flying at Hilo. On the other hand, a knight in golden armor, summoned by Cindy, was attacking the guy. Hilo could not stand it and made the removal of the seal. A kind of water sword appeared in his hand. He wounded a knight and put a mark of envy on him, Leviathan. After that, the knight melted. In the next second, Hilo was behind Victor. The guy was scared, but managed to release his chains in time. Hilo's water blade got stuck in Victor's chains. But then the guy took another one and attacked Victor with renewed vigor. There was a powerful explosion. The guy released the second level. Cindy asked Victor if he was okay. He answered positively, although he was lying under the rubble. The girl thought that this newcomer was hiding his strength and it seems they really have problems. The girl called the Thunder Knights. Several knights in golden armor appeared again and headed towards the guy. They were holding the same golden weapons in their hands. The knights had already come close, But Hilo, with the help of his water element magic, cut one of the knights into 2 parts. The second knight wanted to attack the guy from behind and almost managed to take off his head. But Hilo sensed it in time. With the help of a form of water created a sea armor. Cindy summoned endless lightning and began to cast a spell, following the ancient agreement of the mountains and Vershit. The lightning had to obey her orders and descend to this place. Thunder and lightning attacked Hilo. At that moment, another girl appeared in the room. With the help of the vines, she stopped the fight and ordered all the participants to stop. The vines that the girl summoned created a barrier around Hilo, which protected him from the lightning caused by Cindy. The guy wondered who was capable of such a thing and saved his life. He turned around and saw a girl with green hair, around which there was a light. Her name was Julia Worrest. Cindy addressed the girl as Julia's chairman and was surprised to herself that her sister suddenly found herself in this place. The girl thought that it was impossible for her sister to find out about everything and she needed to distract her somehow. Cindy ran up to her sister and began to ask her about what business she had come here for. The girl turned to Cindy and said that she was picking on the new ones again. The girl guiltily bowed her head and said that she had not done anything like that. She also added that she just decided to check how strong this guy is. Julia approached Hilo and said she apologized to him for the vice president's rudeness. The guy stood up and looked at Cindy. She looked at him very viciously. The guy said that everything was fine with him and thought to himself that he needed to leave this place first. Julia told Hilo to follow her. Victor asked Cindy if she would let Hilo go just like that, but she smiled slyly and said she couldn't do it. The girl said that first they would report to the director, and on the way to him they would talk about this new guy. Hilo was walking behind Julia, and Shields was sitting on his shoulder, still in the form of a cat. She asked the guy about why he was so beaten up and what happened inside, but he didn't say anything and pretended that everything was fine. Shields asked the guy about what kind of green-haired girl she was. The guy replied that he hoped that his identity was not disclosed, and to begin with, they need to get out of this place, and then they can talk. The girl realized that the situation had become more complicated. Suddenly, her assistant ran up to Mrs. Worrest and said that the teacher in the library was asking her to come in. After hearing the girl's name, the guy remembered that once the old man gave him a pendant and said that if Hilo met a girl from the Worrest family, he should give it to her, as it could help Hilo. Julia turned to Hilo. She apologized for the recent incident and said she would keep an eye on Cindy from now on. She added that she still has things to do and therefore she declines first. The guy called out to the girl and stopped her. He took out a pendant from his pocket and showed it to the girl. He asked her if she was familiar with this pendant. The girl looked at him in surprise. She thought that this pendant was a family heirloom and did not understand how it ended up in Hilo's hands. The girl asked the guy about his name. He introduced himself. The girl said she wanted to take a little time away from the guy. As she walked down the hallway, Shields noticed that all students, regardless of their status, loved Chair Julia Worrest. Hilo said that both girls are from noble families, but Julia is very different from Cindy. Shields became even more interested in what had happened in the meeting room. Hilo said that they had previously checked the student lists in the library, but they found nothing about Julia Worrest. In other words, maybe Hilo read her name as Julia Worrest and already thought that his grandfather had given him the wrong information. Suddenly Julia stopped and said that they had come. She asked the guy to come into the office. The girl sat the guy on the sofa and gave him tea. Julia turned to Hilo and asked him to tell her about this pendant. She asked the guy about where he got it from. The guy thought that his grandfather was a sea lord, but his interaction with people on the mainland is a violation of the border agreement and Hilo needs to somehow keep it all a secret. The guy said that the elder gave him this pendant. The girl was surprised. Hilo was also surprised that this was all the girl answered. The guy said that the elder told him that he should show this pendant in case he needed Mrs. Worrest's help. The girl said that this is a special symbol of the Worrest family, which was given to several people. She also added that the owner can use the pendant to ask them for help. Shields was surprised that this pendant was given to only a few people and thought that it seemed to her that Julia was hiding something. The guy replied that he needed access to archival documents of the Academy of all levels of secrecy, and she, as the chairman of the student council, could provide it. Hilo thought about the fact that he had tried to check the archives several times and each time he came across a magical barrier, he dared not ask for more. The girl asked the guy what he needed it for. Hilo replied that he only wanted to find one thing and was not planning anything bad. He also added that he hopes that the girl trusts the owner of this clown. The girl thought a little and said that she could give the guy access, but she has one condition. At that moment, Cindy was in the director's room. She just finished her report. The headmaster of the academy was Lane Glens. The girl also added that with regard to the members of the press, the new first-year student, Hilo Oshins, may be one of them. The director was surprised that this guy is related to the press. The girl replied that she was 100% sure of it. The director wanted to say something, but changed his mind and told the girl to do whatever you want. When the girl was about to leave the office, she said that she would continue to harass the members of the press and hoped that the director would remember their deal, which concerns the whereabouts of the traitors of the Worrest family. The girl asked the director to pay more attention to this. After the girl left the office, Victor asked her about why they finished so quickly. The girl did not answer this question, but said that the director's attitude to the newcomer was strange. However, the girl decided to change the subject and asked Victor to call Leo and Sig. At this moment, the director was thinking about why the Sandal family girl should bear the hatred of the previous generation. At that moment, some dark matter appeared in the office. This one turned out to be one of the heads. The director asked her if they had prepared everything for the child. The answer was positive. Then the director told them to continue following the plan. The director thought that he hoped that the youngest Lord of the Seas would not blame him. Julia stood in her office and thought about Hilo Oshnaz. The girl had some memories of how a little boy on the slope told her to take his hand. The girl was trying to figure out if it was the same guy. At that moment, her assistant also came into the chairman's office. She said she had questions about the academy competition. At that moment, Hilo was standing in front of some tall tower. He remembered the saying that he who does not work does not eat. The guy remembered his conversation with the chairwoman. She said that the library needs workers. Recently the student union was somewhat overloaded. Therefore, if the guy wants to go, she will submit a request for partial access to the archive. At that moment, the caretaker of the library approached the guy. He asked the guy if he was the same cadet Hilo that Miss Worrest had recommended. The guy answered positively. The teacher told the guy to follow him. He said that the teacher who was in charge of sorting books in the library never came back, so they need students to help. The teacher pointed to the table and said that the books for sorting are on it. He also added that he has things to do, so he will leave. Hilo thanked the teacher. Looking at the huge stack of sorting books on the table, the guy sighed heavily. He said he knew it wouldn't be easy. At that moment Shields appeared next to the guy. She was in the guise of a girl again and said that it seemed to her that the chairman decided to punish the guy. Hilo replied that instead of laughing at him, she could help him. The girl replied that it wasn't that and he just didn't understand how she felt. The girl said that since she became a ghost, she can't touch anyone except Hilo. The guy said that in this case the girl can stay there. Well, let her not make a mess. Suddenly, there was a rumble. A girl with blue hair entered the library. She fell and dropped her glasses. Because of her poor eyesight, she couldn't find them. Hilo picked up her glasses from the floor and handed them to the girl. She took the glasses, put them on and thanked the guy. Hilo asked the girl if she was okay and if she had any injuries. The girl thought that the guy was very handsome and her nose immediately bled. The girl immediately stood up, bowed, thanked the guy and said that she was fine. After that, the guy said that the books on the floor still needed help. The girl said she could handle it herself. It turned out that it was a teacher. With the help of magic, she gathered all the books scattered on the floor into a large pile in one motion and left. When she left, she told the student to just mind his own business and not worry about her. The guy and the girl looked at the teacher and thought that she was strange. Suddenly they saw a stone on the floor. It had the words Kempel Megamot written on it. Hilo realized that this stone had just fallen from the teacher. The girl asked him if he should return the stone. The guy replied that the teacher had already gone up to the second floor, which is protected by a magical education and they could not go there without permission. They decided to wait for the teacher to come down and then give it to him. At that moment, the guy carefully examined the stone and said that it seemed a little strange. After the guy finished sorting the books in the library, he went to his room. It was already dark outside. Leaving the library, Shields said that this teacher was reckless. Hilo thought about the fact that she never came out. Shields said she was tired and they could return the stone another time. The guy replied that perhaps the teacher really left through another entrance and would not return the stone tomorrow. At that moment, a man in a robe and mask was watching Hilo and Shields from the height of the library. He was smiling. As soon as Shields and Hilo disappeared into the woods, he turned his magic on them. The girl remembered that the teacher called Hilo by name. The guy suggested that she might have learned the name from the chairman. At that moment, Sig Slaughter, a second-year student of the Flame faculty, and Leo Flane from the same faculty were walking through the forest. Suddenly the guy decided to attack Hilo and start a fight with him. Hilo ran in the forest over mountains and rocks from fire attacks. He had just seen a silhouette. At that moment, a fiery ray passed a few centimeters from Hilo. Hilo fell to the ground and said that if he was not mistaken, it was an elf of ancient flame. Suddenly Shields said that her dress was on fire and began to extinguish it rather. The high elf of the flame is Jukeiro. Hilo thought it was very strange how Jukeiro could become a human elf if he constantly served the circle of the black flame dragon. At that moment, two guys caught up with Hilo. They were trying to catch their breath as they quickly ran after the guy. Leo Flane was surprised that Hilo didn't run away and stood in front of him. He shouted that the guy couldn't escape and held out his magic wand. A flame came out of it. Hilo and Shields hid and dodged the attack. At that moment, the guy noticed that the fire ray was gone. And then it turned out that the beam did not disappear. It appeared again from under the ground, very close to the place where the guy was standing. Hilo thought that from the very beginning the attack was from underground and he was carried away. Leo was upset and clicked because Hilo noticed his attack from under the ground. At that moment, Shields thought that Leo should have fired on the ground because it was dangerous and not funny. The girl begged Hilo to let her teach this guy a lesson. In response, the guy said that this type is restless and the girl should find a place to hide. The guy thought that he hoped that trouble would pass him by, but apparently he still has to fight. At that moment, Shields hugged the guy and said she wouldn't leave. They started arguing because the girl didn't want to leave Hilo alone, and he was afraid for Shields and told her to leave and hide, as it was too dangerous in this place. Shields said she didn't want the guy to get hurt again and persuaded him to help him. The guys who attacked Hilo did not see the girl, because she was a ghost and thought that the guy was talking to the air. Leo ordered his subordinate Sig to stand aside, to which the guy replied that he would fulfill his request, but asked his master to be careful. The man called Hilo a plebeian and said that he was imposing on trouble. After that, the guy attacked Hilo with Jukeiro's fire magic. Hilo thought that he did not really want to harm the ancient elves, but it was too late and he would have to fight. Hilo began to use his water magic to repel the attack. Suddenly there was an explosion. At that moment, Cindy and Victor were in the woods nearby and watched the explosions. Victor said that, apparently, everything has already begun. He also asked his mistress if it was really necessary to do this. He assumed it was the smell of the seal. This was not the first time the lock had been used. The girl replied that she did not agree with Victor, because she felt that it was the smell of the castle, not the seal, and there was no mistake. However, the girl thought that it could be the smell of the castle, but much stronger than the previous ones. She thought about the fact that it didn't work out in the academy building, but outside. The girl mentally asked Hilo Oceans not to disappoint her. Hilo was clearing his throat at that moment because he had inhaled a lot of smoke. He couldn't figure out what kind of explosion it was. Suddenly he remembered Shields, turned around, looked at her and asked if she was okay. He looked at her and said that everything seemed to be fine. Leo decided that Hilo had hit his head, since to him it still looked like he was talking to the air. However, he decided that it would be a good idea to send an idiot to hell and it would not be difficult. The guy called Jukeiro again and wanted to attack Hilo with a beam, but suddenly a stone appeared that blocked the fire. However, this stone will only increase the number of fire rays that attacked Hilo. The guy was thinking about how he could block the attack, while Leo did not understand what kind of stone it was. Suddenly, a huge boulder fell to the ground, which raised a huge cloud of smoke and dust. The guy realized that in front of him was the same man in a robe, that is, the castle. Hilo and Shields were at the Little Asgard Theater the next day. The girl asked the guy about what kind of ancient elf he was and added that she had never seen him. The guy replied that it was Jukeiro and he only knows about him what was written in Grandfather High's notes. Jukeiro is a high flame elf, born of an ancient flame near the crater of a volcano, feeds on lava, aggressive by nature, collects fire through the upper hole and releases a fire beam at the enemy. When the clan was defeated for territory, they began to serve the black dragon flame as payment. 3 magic circles prove about the enslavement contract. The girl asked about where, in this case, the ancient flame is located and how it differs from the ancient sea in which Hilo and Shields lie. The guy replied that he should be in the southwest of the mainland and told about the difference. After that, the girl asked about who the black flame dragon elf was and which one of them was better than their family Leviathan. After that, the girl asked why he, the Lord of the Sea, was being hunted. I asked him if he felt weak because he was still a human being. The castles were sitting at their table and discussing. One of them said that Cindy Sandal's people had already met Hilo Oshnas. He also said that killing people and setting up the boy would distract her attention for a while. Another replied that the water is a little muddy, and it's always easier for them to get that item. He also added that it seems they are one step closer to exposing God, but this time it seems to him that it is impossible to count on success. At that moment, the chief of them spoke up. He told the others not to worry, because this time one of the top 7 was sent. It was a manipulator from the world of deception called the Sixth Doll. During the fight between Hilo and Leo, one of the black-robed men appeared between them. It was the same mask that had watched Hilo and Shields leave the library. The guy felt that he smelled black magic. Leo shouted at the man in the robe and asked him about where he came from and whether he had come to save this kid Hilo. The man was silent and looked at Hilo. Suddenly Leo thought that it could be a person from the same new organization, which, according to Mrs. Cindy, could be an accomplice of the freshman Hilo. According to the plan, we need to retreat and wait for the arrival of Mrs. Cindy, but the guy decided that he alone would be enough. He summoned the Jukeiro elf again and directed fire at the man in black. However, he immediately put his hand forward and created a stream of water. Their streams of fire and water met and began to resist each other. After a while there was an explosion. Hilo noted that, as then, the fire exploded upon contact with water. Suddenly, the man in black spoke. He said that the water obtained by magic does not boil even with very strong heating. If you add a little dust to the fire, an explosion will form. The man in black realized that Leo combines the magic of fire and earth and noted that it was very clever. Hilo was surprised that his opponent was using combined magic, but he didn't know what it was since he was sleeping in class. At that moment, the man in black created a sickle with the help of black magic, outlined a circle with it and cut Leo into 2 parts in the stomach area. He said he was sorry Leo wasn't attentive enough. The guy didn't immediately realize what had just happened. How did the man in black suddenly get so close and why didn't Jukeiro stop him? Leo screamed with a heart-rending scream. At that moment, his subordinate was standing behind the tree, and because of the fog, he could not see anything except that his young master seemed unable to move. Suddenly he heard someone's words and asked if they were telling him the truth, calling the man Uncle Long. The guy ran to his young master in horror. He started shaking him by the shoulders and asking if he was okay. However, the guy did not answer him. Then the subordinate began to scream even harder. Suddenly, a man in a black robe spoke up and said that it was useless, because the young master would not wake up anyway, no matter how loudly the guy screamed. He replied that only he could awaken him from the illusion of the black mist. However, the man in black noted that the guy was in his black fog from the very beginning, but is still conscious. The guy shouted at the man in black to urgently and quickly return the young gentleman to him, otherwise let him not blame him for his rudeness. The man in black didn't like how noisy the guy was, and he directed threads of energy from his black magic at him and tied it around his throat. The threads began to strangle the guy. The man in black spoke up and said he wanted to thank the guy because he ran back to his death, otherwise he could have left the fish that escaped from the net. The man in black continued to strangle the guy, and he in response began to ask him to let the young gentleman go. The man in black asked if these were the last words of the young man. After that, he was about to say goodbye to him and kill him, when suddenly he found himself in a strong beam of light and Hilo ran at him from behind with a sword in his hands. The guy began to ask for the return of the young gentleman and the guy. The man in the black robe loosened his grip and released the guy. It turned out that Hilo had cut off his arm. The man in black shouted Hilo's name and became enraged. At this moment, Cindy and Victor were still watching what was happening in the woods nearby. Seeing the blue color and hearing the scream, they moved in that direction. The girl thought that Leo should have retreated, as she told him, but the girl had a bad feeling. The girl mentally asked Zig and Hilo not to create unnecessary trouble for her. The man in black turned to Hilo and praised him, because he not only managed to pass through the illusion of the black fog, but also took advantage of the moment and wounded him. He said that Hilo is really annoying and according to their plan, they should have kept him alive for a while, but apparently if you let Hilo go, it will lead to even more problems. So the man in the robe decided that he himself would make the decision to get rid of Hilo. While he was saying these words, the severed arm returned to its place and was sewn to the body. All this happened with the help of black magic. Hilo saw the pattern on the mask of the man in black and remembered the book in the library. Hilo turned to the man and asked him if he was a castle. The man in black was surprised that Hilo knew about them, because the existence of the castle is considered a mainland secret. He realized that Hilo has great power and knows about the existence of the castle, and signed up for the commoners. Now the man in the robe was even more interested in where Hilo came from. After that, Chelicek said that all this could be postponed and now his question is different. Leo and Sig clearly wanted to hurt Hilo, so why is he protecting them? In response to this, the guy said that it was not the case of the man in black. Hilo thought that, after all, these two were most likely related to the ancient flame. Sig was dragging Leo's body away from the battlefield at that time. He was thinking about what happened to Hilo. He had just finished the offensive and was about to contact when he suddenly appeared. Sig wondered if Hilo and the man in black were really at the same time and if the information Cindy Sandal had provided was wrong. On the same day, earlier, the girl called Leo and Zig to her. She told them that Dio would only need to lure out Hilo's accomplice and then immediately retreat. He didn't understand why Cindy asked him to do such a simple thing, because she could find someone else for this role. Nevertheless, Leo agreed and left the room with Sig. The girl stopped Sig and said she wanted to ask him something. Cindy asked the guy to let her talk to the one sitting inside him. It was the black fire dragon Reikuno. At that moment, judging by the guy's red eyes, the dragon came out. He was thinking that according to Cindy Sandal's contract, he should only protect the guys, and then wait for her arrival. But for some reason, the dragon had a familiar feeling at the sight of Hilo Oshnas. At that moment, the man in the black robe said that Hilo answered him very rudely. Hilo said he would like to know why the man in black is chasing Leo and Zig and why the castle is sneaking into the academy. In response to this, the man in black said that he would tell Hilo a little only if he could survive. After that, he directed threads of black magic at Hilo, but the guy was able to dodge and block the attack. Hilo realized that these black threads could immediately predict his attacks. But this is not magic that is able to predict, since they clearly cannot predict Hilo's landing. Otherwise then they were ahead of his attacks and not just avoiding them. Then Hilo wondered what these black threads were. Hilo thought of the man in the black robe controlling the threads from afar. But the guy couldn't figure out how he does it, since there is no sign of his control and there are no traces of magic either. At that moment, the castle was thinking that Hilo, an ignorant boy, was trying to dodge the threads. The man thought that Hilo would not be able to do this. While he is experiencing any emotions, Hilo will be able to escape from them. Whether it's joy, zeal, rage, or despair, all the most tender and cruel emotions are deeply woven into people's lives and control them. These threads are invisible to ordinary people. They are seen only by a man in black. Using a little magic, they succumb to his control. He saw the boy's thread at the moment when he cut off his hand. At that moment, taking advantage of the opportunity, he attached several guiding threads to Hilo's right arm. The magic of the guiding threads is weak and unstable. The slightest movement will cause a significant fluctuation, resulting in what appears to be a thread, in fact, a deviation from the attack. Their magic will gradually attract other threads, increasing their number, and so on until Hilo completely comes under the control of the man in the black robe. At that moment, the castle attacked again. Hilo thought that with such success, this fight would never end. The guy decided that since he couldn't hit these things, he would just ignore them and focus on the caster instead. The guy came very close to the caster and was going to attack him with his sword, but the latter, saying that it was a useless struggle, created threads right in front of him, thereby protecting himself from the attack. Hilo did not expect this and did not know what to do. Hilo decided that since he couldn't get close to the caster, he needed to deal with the threads first. The guy also thought that he was infuriated that after leaving the relic, his power became limited. Suddenly, the guy realized that the last movement of the black threads was strange. The threads suddenly bent at the exact moment when the guy dodged the attack with his hand. Hilo thought that perhaps the threads were repeating the movements of his hand, or to be more precise, his right hand. Suddenly, Hilo blocked another attack by the man in black. He was surprised that the kid could do such a thing, but his attack still hadn't stopped. Hilo realized that he had no choice and could risk using his left hand instead of his right. At that moment, the guy cut the threads with a slice and the man in the black robe realized that Hilo guessed his tactics and told the guy that he was right. But it would be a mistake on Hilo's part to forget about the caster himself, who at that moment got very close. He had already raised his scythe and was ready to strike, when suddenly Cindy appeared. She flew straight into the man's face, kicking him and crushing the mask. She landed and said it was her cue. She shouted at the man, saying that she had been looking for him for a very long time. The man couldn't understand what Cindy Sandal was doing here. The girl turned to the man in the black robe, calling him the sixth puppet, and said that they had not seen each other for a long time and she did not expect to find him in such a place. She said she still remembers his debt for stealing the secrets of the sea last time. Hearing this, Hilo was surprised and couldn't figure out how Cindy knew about this. The secret of the sea is a seal that is used to suppress demons. Hilo now realized that he couldn't find her in the library, as she had already been taken away. The girl turned to Hilo, calling him Hyming Oceanus, and said that Sig had already told her about what had happened and thanked the guy for the help he had given her friend when he needed her. However, the girl added that until she is completely confident in the guy, she will be afraid of him. However, she added that the sixth puppet is now the most dangerous, and also one of the most problematic. At this time, Shields was calmly lying on a branch of a tree and sleeping. She was holding that very stone in her hands and it suddenly began to glow. The last time an alien demon was suppressed was hundreds of years ago. It cannot be completely destroyed. However, it was possible to seal it with the help of 7 sacred artifacts filled with the power of the gods. The 7 gods kept these 7 artifacts, but with the passage of time and the change of gods, the seal gradually disappeared. And more recently, news began to spread in Asgard among other memorable places. Even the previous generation of the god of the seas felt that the seal restraining demons had weakened. Hilo is here to confirm the disappearance of the seal and the location of the sealed object. During her stay, Shields several times sympathized with an abnormal magical wave near the library. Hilo and Shields went on a search, but returned with nothing. From the previous dialogue, Hilo was able to conclude that the sealed object, the secret of the sea, was carried away by the 6th doll. If Hilo can defeat the doll, but cannot recover the secret of the sea, then at least they will determine its location with Hilo's current strength. At this moment, the 6th doll attacked with a murderous explosion, using its puppet technique. Cindy warned the guy about the attack, but he noticed it too late and realized that it would not be possible to escape. At that moment, the girl stood between the attack and Hilo and created a shield that repelled the attack of the 6th doll. The girl turned to the guy and told him to listen to her carefully, since she speaks once. She said that even if they joined forces, it would be very difficult to defeat the 6th doll, so they had to find another way. The girl asked the guy if he saw the black and blue stone that fell with the doll. She said it's a limit stone that creates its own enchantment area. In the Asgard Academy, the entire territory is surrounded by a powerful barrier that the director has put up. This very barrier is one of the methods of external protection. Direct witchcraft is the magic of the ocean, thunder, earth, hurricane, fire, as well as forest magic. Due to the simultaneous use of magic barriers, direct magic will be suppressed. The Stone of the Limit is able to overcome magical barriers to forcibly open borders with attributes. In the doll dimension, the chances of Hilo and Sydney winning are 0. The Stone of the Limit must be destroyed. And then, with the help of the magic of the director, it must be suppressed. Hilo decided that the girl was asking the guy to destroy the stone, but she said she would do it herself, since she has more experience in destroying these stones. The girl said that Hilo would take over the doll's attacks. The guy thought that Cindy was offering him cooperation and decided that he could think about it. Hilo said that there is one problem, that the strange black threads of the 6th doll are interfering with him. He can't get close. Cindy told the guy he didn't have to worry about it. She told him to attack the puppets, and she would find a way to deal with the black threads. However, Cindy added that the guy has only 10 seconds. She said that after her attack, Hilo would have only 10 seconds before the black threads would reappear and she would warn the guy about them. She again reminded the guy that he must defeat the puppet and for this he has only 10 seconds. The guy replied that he had fought with these black threads before and did not know whether the combination of forces would work and whether 10 seconds would be enough for him. The girl said that before they fought against each other, she found it easier for Hilo to launch melee attacks, but the dolls rely on black threads, torture their victim to death, and then harvest. In other words, the sixth doll is not strong in close combat, so the guy should rely on Cindy. The guy sighed and agreed with the girl, since he simply has no other way out. He replied to the girl that he understood her and would trust her. The girl smiled and said that it was wonderful and in that case they would start right now. After these words, the girl removed her shield and the guy ran away from the threads. The sixth doll decided that Cindy and Hilo were planning to split up and attack, but it was in vain because a moment before Cindy Sandal arrived, he imposed a guidance line. At that moment, the threads attacked Hilo again in huge numbers. Cindy called out to Victor and Shige. They heard her and activated the thunder barrier and the fire barrier. Shige realized that they couldn't wait too long. After that, a magical barrier of fire and thunder was created. The sixth doll realized what it was and decided that they wanted to restrict his movements, but it seemed to him that there must be something else. At this moment, the threads shifted from the trajectory of the attack on Hilo and the guy began to think about how the girl did it. The main problem in eliminating the puppet is invisible magic threads. Although the threads are weak, it is extremely difficult to completely get rid of them. The girl thought that at the moment there are no conditions for their destruction, but you can try something else. When a huge barrier is formed, a huge wave of magical power will rush in. Two elements simultaneously confront each other. Two ceilings of magical power merge, trying to destroy each other, and along the way they will touch these threads and get to other places. However, in just 10 seconds, the magic power will return to stability, the magic lines will reconnect, so they all have only one attempt. Suddenly, the pole doll discovered that Cindy Sandal's target is the limit stone. He said he wouldn't let them succeed and it was over. At that moment Leo woke up and led his fiery chaos into the puppet. The sixth doll clicked to the fact that I was using a random stream on him again. In response, Leo said that the sixth doll should not underestimate the young master and called his opponent a broken doll. The girl praised Leo and summoned the Thunder Universe. A huge lightning strike hit the stone directly and shattered it into small pieces. The sixth doll froze for a second and could not understand what kind of fluctuations he was feeling. It turned out that it was the director, who was sitting in his office and restoring the territory. The girl shouted to Hilo that his exit was now. The guy turned to the souls living in the ocean, who had awakened from the cracks in the abyss and ordered them to appear before him in the name of the sea god. Hilo thought that the castle's intentions were revealed. Most likely, the weakening of the seal is connected with him, so you need to take the seal from the sixth doll. The guy decided that the mission in Asgard was almost completed, so this battle could not be lost. Hilo blocked the threads of the sixth doll, which surprised him very much. After a few seconds, he found himself near the puppet. The sixth doll noted the guy's high speed and suggested that he use thunder magic in order to increase his speed. The sixth doll decided to cut Hilo with one wave of his hand, but it turned out to be a fiery illusion that was created thanks to Leo because of that fire attack. At that moment, Hilo hit the sixth doll. The girl couldn't figure out if her plan had worked. Suddenly she saw a big white hurricane and realized what was happening. Hilo stood in front of the sixth puppet and their forces, touching, fought with each other. The guy was thinking that the stone of the limit was destroyed, and the magic of the director was supposed to suppress the sixth doll. Hilo didn't understand where he got so much powerful strength from. The puppet spoke to Hilo Ashansu and said that it was commendable that he had learned such a thing. He also said that the plan for unification, of course, is very good, but unfortunately it turned out to be too soft. The sixth doll asked Hilo if he really thought there was only one limit stone here. The guy was horrified. The sixth doll added that his mask was also made of him and told Hilo to look around. Hilo realized that the black threads surrounded him and did not understand when it happened. Hilo's legs were tightly bound and he couldn't move. The sixth doll said that such a magical barrier could not in any way put him in a difficult position, because he had long ago created a swampy dark zone around the battlefield. And on top of everything else, he also took advantage of illusions that helped him make Hilo Oshans drive himself into a trap. After a short pause, the man in the black robe continued to speak and this time mentioned Cindy Sandal. The sixth doll said that the guy should not even wait and hope for the arrival of the girl, since she is immersed in his illusions and will not be able to help him and other guys in any way. After that, he again called the name of Hilo Oshans and invited him to plunge into the world of his illusions in this swampy dark zone. At the end, he added amen as if it was some kind of prayer. The threads completely enveloped the guy from head to toe, creating a kind of cocoon around him and he plunged into darkness. At that moment, from afar, some kind of light ball flew into the forest. He was aiming straight for the dark swampy area where all the heroes of the battle were stuck. Suddenly, the ball turned into a girl. It was Shield's ghost. She looked at the sixth doll and smiled sadly. The girl addressed him by the name of Canper and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. The man was clearly in shock and recognized the girl. At that moment, a huge light beam hit the place where the girl was and, accordingly, into the dark swamp next to her. A few hours earlier, there was a sixth doll in the director's room. He approached the director, and in response to this, the old man asked him about why he was here. He asked the director if he needed to act according to the instructions of the castle and warned that students could seriously suffer because of this. In response to the concerns of the sixth doll, the director responded positively and said that he knew it was dangerous. After that, the old man said that if everything was really like that, then he should find a way to give Hilo Ashnas one thing. The old man handed the sixth doll a stone. The man in the black robe immediately realized that this was the secret of the sea. The old man said that Hilo should have protected this thing from the very beginning, because the child came to find him, so they are just returning the thing to the original owner. On top of everything else, he added that he wanted to make sure of something. In any case, he asked the man in the black robe to fulfill his request and called him Teacher Canper. After the beam of light hit the cocoon in which Hilo was, he was released from it as the threads dissolved. It was obvious that the guy was surprised by such a coincidence and could not understand what had happened. Suddenly, the sixth doll came up to Hilo and, addressing him by name, began to speak. His mask split and fell on the mantle, which was lying on the ground. He said that this time he would let the guy go, but very soon they would definitely meet again. After that, the sixth doll finally disappeared. Hilo stood and could not understand what had happened and how he managed to get out of this trap. It was the light that manifested inside the limit. The director was sitting in his office and watching what was happening. He realized that, apparently, the person he had been waiting for so long was Hilo Ashnas. The director decided that in this case, she should also be near Hilo. She was the previous head of the demonic seal light celestial named Erse. At this time, two other people in black robes were watching the fight from the cliff. One of them said that it seemed that this collision was useless, because nothing happened, and added that he just wanted to see if the old man would cope. However, he also noted that the unpleasant aroma that appeared earlier has now received its explanation, and this trip was not in vain. The night after this battle, in the 7th dormitory of Asgar, Hilo lay on the bottom shelf of a bunk bed and thought about what had happened to him. The guy was thinking that the sixth doll had absolute superiority, and if she had struck another blow, she could have killed Hilo. The guy could not get rid of his dark threads. They were like an endless trap. However, it was at that moment that he saw her, a beautiful girl. There was a very strong bright light coming from her, but he couldn't see her face. She was standing with her back to the guy. The girl said that the stone of the limit had already arrived from Asgar, and they had already begun to act. She also said that there are 6 more seals. We need to find them as soon as possible, otherwise it will be too late. All Hilo was thinking about was who she was and what kind of power she possessed. After the battle, Hilo asked Cindy if there was anyone else. The girl was looking at the fragments of the mask at that moment. She replied that a magic barrier had been set up before the battle began, so no one had intruded and couldn't even do it. The girl also added that if someone got in, she would definitely feel it. Hilo asked the girl again about whether she was sure of this and thought that maybe what he had seen earlier was just an illusion. Cindy looked at Hilo and told them to stop talking about the puppet. Instead, she offered to talk about Hilo. She addressed him by name and asked if he was definitely a beginner. Hilo was surprised by this question. The girl added that Hilo Ashna's abilities are higher than any average student and added that even high school students will not be able to resist him. And even considering the fact that the castle sent 5 dolls, she was curious about Hilo's past and asked the guy about who he really was. The girl silently waited for an answer, while Hilo was also silent and did not want to answer. After a few seconds, the girl told the guy to forget about the question, because she has important things to do. Cindy needed to send Leo and Shige for treatment and also settle some issues. The girl added that Hilo should also return to the campus and treat his wounds. Leaving, the girl told Hilo to come to the boardroom tomorrow at noon, and she needed to deal with many problems. The girl also smiled and added that if the guy does not come, then it will be worse for him. Cindy left and Hilo was finally able to exhale. The guy thought that he had never noticed before that Seer wanted to participate in the war so actively and thought that the girl must be hiding somewhere. The guy realized that he clearly did not see an illusion, but what the girl then said about the limit stone, Asgar and the sealed artifact clearly haunted Hilo. He couldn't understand how all these things were connected. Hilo decided not to torment himself, since he was already too tired, and tomorrow he also had a meeting with his deputy. Suddenly Hilo caught himself and thought about where Seer was. Hilo remembered that when he was returning to the dorm, shields seemed to be following him, and then completely stopped responding to the call of his heart. The guy just hoped that she was all right. Suddenly a blonde guy came into the room, who apparently had just come out of the shower. It was Sora, Hilo's roommate. He was surprised that Hilo returned so late and asked him about where he was and what he was doing. Sora asked the guy if he had found something to entertain himself with. He replied that he went to the library in order to check some materials. He also added that in the end there is something that he does not quite understand. Sora agreed with Hilo and said that some of the things the professors say are really not quite clear. After that, he picked up a note from the table and handed it to Hilo. He said it was passed by someone from the student council. Hilo was surprised and took the paper in his hands. It was an application form for participation in big competitions. Hilo asked his roommate about academic competitions. The guy replied that Asgar annually holds this competition and freshmen can also participate. The guy added that it seems that the winner will be able to practice special magic. Sora also added that he asked around and found out that this year's competition is held earlier than in previous years. Representatives of the student council also said that another test was added this year. Rumor has it that this is a tower that has been closed for decades, and now it will open for testing. And yet, there are rumors that a ghost lives in the tower. In any case, Sora added that it sounds interesting and asked Hilo if he would take part. Hilo answered in the negative and justified it by saying that he is a beginner, which means his chances of success and victory are small. After these words, Hilo turned away to the wall. He added that he was not going to participate in something lively. Sora asked the guy if he was sure, since the guy was going to form a team with Hilo. Hilo thought that he had enough problems, so he simply did not have the strength to compete at all. After that, Sora added that Hilo smells strange. The guy asked Hilo if he was going to go to bed without taking a bath, because apparently it would close soon. Hilo was surprised by this, jumped out of bed and said that he was already on his way. It was already the middle of the night outside. Sora was lying in bed alone in his room while Hilo was washing in the bathroom. Shields was sitting on the edge of a railing on the roof of a building at the time. The girl's gaze was sad. She was looking into the distance and thinking about her own. At that moment, Hilo appeared. He said that he had been looking for a girl for a very long time, and she turns out to be sitting here. He asked Shields what she was thinking before he came to her and what she was looking at. Does she have any thoughts? The girl turned to Hilo and told him to listen carefully to what she was about to say. She looked at the guy and suggested that he immediately leave the Asgar Academy.